G'day everyone, good to see you all. We've got a nice happy crowd here. Blinky, Blinky, Blinky. The little troll from Western Australia. He's a harmless troll, Mary, so that you don't have to worry. he's all talking, zero action. So Mary's just about to come on. I'll introduce Mary, and it's good to see a lot of people here. She's had an opportunity to look at your questions. She found them very interesting, which is great. And we will get into it soon because she's only got about a bit over an hour. So we'll get stuck into all those questions, and then any others that we get a chance to talk about, we'll get into those. So at this stage, I'll introduce Mary. Most of you guys know her. She's a nutritionist from that is based in Greece. She originates from, I believe, California is your...
Oregon. Yeah, it's
Oregon.
California.
Okay.
Ohio, kind of all over.
Okay. So you got a bit of family everywhere in those parts of America. Okay. And she's a nutritionist. She does research and also provides nutritional advice to a number of different organizations, but including she does private consultations with people and assists them with the nutritional questions, plus with a number of both esoteric type diseases, but also intractable type diseases as well that she deals with. And she's a smart cookie when it comes to that sort of stuff. She's got a lot of experience. But for this sort of live stream, we'll be discussing the questions that people have posed about the Maasai, the Hadza. I noticed I think there were more about the Maasai than the Hadzas or some of the other groups. So we know where most of these carnies have their focus on, milk and meat. So good to have you here. Welcome to the live stream.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, we will basically get into it. And what I'll do is I'll bring up all those questions that I had in the announcement once. I'll just call them out. I'll read them out, each one of them, and then we will move through. I just need to... Oh, that's the wrong one. Go back to the other one. Oops. It's going to be... Okay, so they've increased to 27.
Great.
And now I just need to work out, is there a way of... Nah, we can't. I was trying to do them by date and time and all that, but we'll just go with the first one. I will bring that on the I'll share that on the screen. Oops. And there we are. So, oops. Just increase it slightly until we get good visibility. Nearly there. Oops. This will be all as far as we need to go. Okay, first one we've got is from Dave in Barcelona. So, hi, Mary. Wondering if during all your studies of tribal groups, you have anything to say about the prevalence of neurological conditions within their communities. Given the explosion of such conditions in modern society, could you speculate about the possible benefits of their diets and lifestyle in this regard? Many thanks.
Great question. So, I specialize in neurological conditions, having come out of a few of them, right? And I'm even leading a neuropathy basically a reversal group as well, and all sorts of things. You just don't see these issues in traditional societies, and it's actually very fascinating going into one of the questions later, because some of these groups do eat cyanide-rich food, which has been known to cause neurological damage, specifically types of neuropathy and ataxia, where you can't walk correctly. You kind of stumble and you have poor coordination. You don't see that though in any of these groups. What I've seen work the best for neurological conditions are traditional heavy fat-based diets for the most part. So whether it's a carnivore with a heavy fat focus, specifically saturated fat, tends to prevent that. And part of that is because the building block of the nervous system, what rebuilds it is really saturated fat and cholesterol, right? That's kind of the food of the nervous system. So you need a lot of that in your diet. You also, though, don't want to have many toxins going on when you have a neurological condition. So we've really been in this bit of a stew over the last 60 years with being on low-fat diets plus high toxin load from the environment and from our own microbiomes. So we've had both going. Part of the issue with the toxins is that whether you're talking about bacterial toxins or environmental toxins or hormonal toxins like too much cortisol, is that toxins are typically fat soluble. They go to the fattiest tissue, and the nervous system is primarily made of fat. It's a very high fat tissue. And because of this, the toxins tend to go there, right? And so when you've got this modern society with very high toxin load, not enough saturated fat, imbalanced microbiome, you see a lot of neurological decline, whether that's in things like ADD, ADHD, or mood disorders, or seizure disorders, or neurological conditions of autoimmunity, right? We see a lot of all of those. And I think that's really where they're coming from. My word to anyone dealing with those is that they're often very reversible, and it can maybe take a while, but not usually too complicated. It's usually a pretty simple process to rebuild those. The other factor I would say, the third main factor contributing to all the neurological issues that we're seeing today would be issues of deficiency. We have a great deal of B deficiencies that we see across the globe. Most notably, I would say niacin from all the corn consumption that hasn't been through the lye process, but we have a really enormous amount of B deficiencies. And then on the flip coin of that, a lot of people will go to naturopaths or a natural health practitioner, or they'll read something online and they'll be told, okay, maybe I should take a B complex. But then they're taking that B complex for years and years. And ironically, too much, a surplus of B vitamins can also cause neuropathy. So you can get it from the deficiency or from the surplus. And so because of that, we've got all three of those issues going on that are really damaging the nervous system. But again, something very much in our power to change.
That's something that I've sort of focused on with a lot of people that do follow me, that even with niacin, there's too much of a good thing. And I've always told them to stay below 300 micrograms rather than go above that. It's a bit on the risky side. But even in older age, as we get older, we tend to have more senescent cells, which are protected by CD38 that degrades NAD+. And the issue there is you really need to knock out some of that sort of stuff. We create more senescent cells in our bodies. Now, we can take, as I've said to people, ficetine, I think that's how it's spelled, FISETIN, which is basically a senolytic that basically causes apoptosis of senescent cells. But at the same time, that's not a perfect solution. We need a clean diet. It's simple as that. That's what these people may occasionally use some of these things, but they don't use them on a regular basis because they don't have high levels of senescence or damage. They don't have a lot of these toxins out there. And even when it comes to basically, we're eating far too high oxalate foods, or we've got too many chemicals that are generating oxalates as well, and a lot of other things. We've got not enough selenium for selenite to get rid of some of that stuff. Not enough from animal products, because the level I think I've heard in America now, it's like a quarter of the nutrients are coming from any combination of animal foods, and maybe even less now in the US. I mean, what do you know the actual numbers that are at that level? I mean,
I don't, but I do know the primary foods, which most people would be surprised by, maybe not your audience, are primarily corn and soy. Those are the main foods being consumed. They're just repackaged to look like very different things. So, but I'm not sure. Meat consumption overall has gone down pretty significantly in the last 100 years.
It's declined massively. I mean, the US is below what it was in meat production back in the 70s, and the population has nearly doubled. You know, it's just real. And even then, they were starting to decline in the 70s, let alone now, compared to the past. It's horrific what's happening. But let's move on with a few other questions as well. From Trouble, hi Mary, are there any autoimmune illnesses present in the tribes you worked with?
Great. Trouble, first of all, I love your name. It's great. No, there's anyone living in the traditional way. I haven't seen any autoimmune conditions. The only exception would be people that had gone into the city. There's some cases of people that grew up in a tribal format and then contracted HIV within the city. But I don't see any of the kind of autoimmune conditions we tend to get from the ulcerative colitis, the Crohn's, the psoriasis, eczema, any of that kind of stuff, MS. You don't see any of the chronic non-infectious based autoimmune conditions, and really you don't see any autoimmunity at all if they're really living in their tribal way.
Can I just ask a question? Because I know that vitamin D is implicated is at the core of autoimmunity, or the deficiency of vitamin D in most of the world. When it comes to, do we actually see amongst the same tribal groups when they move to the cities, do we see any sort of autoimmunity even within one generation, or does it have to take more than that?
It takes at least three. It takes at least 3 generations. So for instance, I was just with the San. The San are the original bush people of Southern Africa. So not just the country, Botswana, Namibia, this whole region. And they really were incredible medicine men. They were teaching me about all their herbs. They have an incredible knowledge still. But it was interesting because I was talking to a man who grew up in the traditional San way. His parents did as well. And he had no health issues. Then I was speaking to a girl who didn't grow up that way, but whose grandmother did, but she didn't really teach her anything. And she was dealing with cancer of the foot and all sorts of health issues. So you usually see it in the 3rd generation is where it starts to pop up. And in some regions, even further with things like chronic disease. But typically, it's things like diabetes that will set in sooner in maybe the 2nd generation, and that will be older when they're older in general.
Okay, that's interesting. So it sort of follows a similar sort of what has happened in like Pottinger's cats. Takes a couple of generations, then by the 4th and 5th, where we see really major derangements and malformations and all sorts of other things.
Underlined more highly. The generational impact is very significant. And so we may not see things in 1 week of a change or this kind of thing. It's very much, or even a decade, it's very much generational where you see the very big impacts.
I mean, they're talking about something like 1 in 3 cancer now in some countries, in not so distant future, so to speak, which is horrifying. Let alone some people are projecting by the latter part of the end of the 21st century, like half the population. It's ridiculous. It's crazy, these predictions. I hope they don't get. I hope we wake up by that stage, and I think what we're doing here. I think what we're doing here is, a valuable contribution to humanity in a sense. I mean, I'm not trying to put us on a pedestal because none of us, we're just basically truth seekers and tellers in that regard. But at the same time, some of this stuff is going to be resources for future generations to hopefully tap in and realize, because if you ask most young people, they don't know exactly what their grandparents ate, have no idea.
No, and do you want to know something really interesting? Here, especially amongst the Shona in Zimbabwe, and of course it's a huge group, so take this with a grain of salt. You're going to get a different answer from different people that you talk to. But the Shona are very modernized. They drink a lot of Coca-Cola. They eat a lot of corn, maize, these kind of things. And if you ask them, like if you talk to them, diabetes is quite a problem for them. And if you talk to them about pulling Coca-Cola out of their diet, they think, many of them think it's a traditional food. It's like the food that their grandparents gave them, and so they don't want to let go of it. And so yeah, there's a lot of loss of traditional knowledge in certain communities. And again, it's not with everyone, but they're big pockets.
Yeah, it's the same thing that's happened in most countries in the West as well, which is unfortunate, but that's the sort of
autoimmunity.
reality.
Quickly on autoimmunity, we did see it historically in places like Egypt, where grains were highly refined and people were living in city structures. It still wasn't common, but we would see diabetes type 1. And then, as many of you will probably know, we did see autoimmune conditions in the Jewish population, still a very small percentage. And I really think that was perhaps from the tradition of unleavened bread as part of the religious yearly diet, because that can trigger that autoimmune component. Those lectins can, whereas other cultures were all fermenting their bread all the time, year round if they had it. Okay.
Yeah, that's true as well. Anyway, let's get on. Okay, from Deborah. So hi, Mary and Harry. Water drinking. I watched your latest interview on Food Lies, where you mentioned that the Changa did not drink water during the day, only in the morning and evening. Since adopting a carnivore diet, coming up to 2 years, I've found to be the case with myself. Why do you think this is the case?
It's pretty common in traditional societies across the board, I would say, of drinking water in the morning and night. But I think, and maybe I spoke to this before, I really do think it's been an adaptation for us to drink so much due to the amount of dehydration we're creating with our diets and with our lifestyles. We're constantly stressed, whether we realize it or not. Our bodies are under stress, and that causes a dehydration at the cellular level, in which case you're constantly trying to catch up. And so I think that's why, as you look at glasses historically, which looking at cookware is always a good insight, you see them just growing with size. And even, in America, we have these really, I don't know if you guys do, we have really large drinking glasses. People will have like 32-ounce drinking glasses, and that's normal. That's just a family, everybody's got one. And you go to other places like Greece, right? They're practically shot glasses. There's no point in even taking your water glass with you away from the sink, because you're going to drink it before you get to where you're going. So very different style of drinking, even in places like Europe or here as well. When you get a coffee, for instance, and it's in a small cup, whereas in the States, it's in a 32-ounce cup. So.
Yeah, it's also the deuterium part as well, which is playing a role in terms of hydration. And that's the difference between a carnivore diet and a high sugar diet. You're constantly thirsty.
Yes, it causes chronic dehydration.
Now, hey, what was their sleep schedule like?
So healthy.
So that's Wakey Toaster.
Yeah, they sit around the fire at night, and really in most of the groups, they sit around the fire at night, they see the stars, they tell stories, and then they all go to sleep, usually by like 11 at the latest, sometimes 9 or 10. It just depends when the sun sets. So usually a couple of hours after sunset, if food is done, then they'll start going to sleep, and then they wake up with the sunrise. So about as healthy as you can get. None of them toss and turn through the night. None of them struggle with insomnia. They all fall asleep easily with no effort, and they don't have to drink any herbs or anything to fall asleep either.
Yeah, it's the thing that they eat within daylight. They eat within circadian rhythms. They don't eat it. They don't eat late at night. They don't eat. So they allow their digestive clock to basically unwind and allow the other clocks to basically synchronize accordingly to the environment they live in. We've sort of thrown that all out the door, and we're suffering for it. So the next one is from D Vox. Not sure if I've been asked, but would be great to have an estimated breakdown of some sort of. I suspect their diet. He means for their diet, or the like S something, whatever. I'm not sure what it means, but something about the diet breakdown. And if they have an idea as to whether they've changed compared now to the past, so the differences between now and the past, referring to the percent of animal products, to plants, macros of carbs, fat, protein, fiber, etc. Thanks, Harry and Mary.
So it's quite Harry and Mary. So it's it's quite different. It's quite different by group as to the macros that they consume. But I'll tell you the pattern I'm really noticing and that I've been nerding out on lately. That is that with the high fat groups or the high moderate protein, high fat groups, you see very little plant matter. There's some, but it's not significant. So we can go group by group. The Maasai would be less than 1% plant matter. They basically boil that root vegetable to make a soup or a tea. And they have that on a daily basis, but it's a liquid like I'm having right now. So it's not a food. So that really wouldn't count too much. They do, however, have a fermented honey drink for celebrations. They don't celebrate very often, so don't think like us. Very different, maybe once a year. They have that beverage. So there is a little bit of plant in there, but it's very small and insignificant, I would say. And the chaga have about 40% plant. 30 to 40% plant, and most of that is starchy prebiotic fiber from plantains, unripened plantains, tubers like sweet potato and taro root or elephant ear. People call it by different things. The eddy plant in the Bahamas is what it's called. And they do a lot of like fish and meat and that kind of thing. So protein would probably be about 30%, fat at least 30 to 40%. And then you have your plant matter for them. There are groups that I haven't been to, like the Costa Ricans, who eat mostly carbohydrates, but you'll notice something. They eat almost no fats, which I know this audience knows about the Randall cycle, but I think there's more to it. I think there's actually more to it. So, and this is what I've been nerding out on lately. They also eat a very high soluble nutrient diet, not insoluble fiber. That stuff is kind of junky, but soluble. Soluble binds to toxins and pulls them out of the body via the liver, right? Fat toxins, specifically toxins bound to fat. Now, cultures like the Maasai have no need for that. They're not creating toxins and they're not in a toxic environment. They don't need to be pulling toxins out. But in the Costa Ricans, they eat an enormous amount of beans and corn. So they are getting plant toxins in their diet. And so if they had high fat with that as well, they would actually recirculate the toxin load over and over. We reabsorb 95% of our bile on average. And because of that, we reabsorb our toxins. So they need that high soluble nutrient in the diet to pull out those toxins. So that's part of why I think you can see these very different diets work. Of course, I think there's the Costa Ricans are the least healthy out of all of the groups because they have the most going against them. So the second one variable comes in, they're kind of just on a precipice of trouble, but they've maintained. And so, and partly because they have so many toxins within their diet, they just also have things to attach to the toxins. Whereas groups like the Maasai just don't. They have a very low toxin lifestyle, diet, and microbiome. So they're good to go. So that's why you'll see some different macros in each of these, and each of these can be applied in a different setting. Whenever you're trying to rebuild a nervous system or an immune system, typically very high fat and protein is very useful, right? But there can be a time later where you can use soluble nutrients once you've restabilized the microbiome to pull out excess toxins. So it's very unique to what's going on.
And a lot of those populations also vary seasonally as well. So there are factors like that that are at play.
Yeah, like the Hudsa, they have about 4 to 5 months where they're pretty carnivore. They're basically carnivore, right? And then they have other months where they do a lot of the cassava and things like that. So it varies. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's right. And as long as you're basically getting, it's not the most optimal, but at the same time, they're living in an environment which is less toxic as well. So there's a lot of other factors at play. They're out and about, so they're depleting deuterium. So even that level of deuterium that's coming in from that plant matter is being depleted compared to somebody eating the same way, living in a city, getting very little exposure to the outside world. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a different result.
Yeah.
It's the same thing like when I say to people about the Inuit. You know, if you're living in the Arctic, you can't have any sugar. You'll get sick very quickly. But if you're basically living close to the tropics, because of deuterium depletion and some of the photonic sort of effects on mitochondria, you can actually mitigate a lot of those effects, and you're actually also extracting additional energy directly from the sun, up to potentially, this is, you know, some people are saying up to a third. Whether that's exactly right to everybody's biology and all that, the exact exposure time in the sun and stuff like that, there's a lot of, we haven't done detailed, but they are estimates and approximates. They should always be treated like that. But it shows that there is an advantage for a number of reasons, being the tropics, if you're going to be eating those sort of foods.
Yes. Yeah. And Figo was asking, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, what determines if you have good bacteria? There's so many things that determine it, but basically, you know, living in a traditional way, we'll do it just naturally. Natural birthing practices, being born through a natural birth, being nursed for a very long time, playing in the dirt, getting lots of sunshine, and living a low stress life as well. We'll do that, and absolutely, it can be rebuilt. It's constantly in flux. So I haven't seen it be a detriment to anyone to where it can't be resolved.
Yeah, and that's a lot of truth in that regard, because they've actually done research and they've shown kids that have natural birth have got all their gut much healthier gut microbiome, even in developed countries, and kids that are coming out and picky and not having a natural birth and picking up a lot of the, what are they called, the hospital pathogens.
Yeah.
They end up with a real bad gut microbiome. And some of those kids are on multiple antibiotics for a long period of time. And there's a lot of questions whether that gut microbiome imbalance, that the problem in developmental time and stuff like that, has other neurological effects. And I believe it does myself. Depending on, there's always going to be differences between child to child and what the parents do and feed it and in between all that. So there's so much nuance. But generally speaking, you're at a disadvantage from the beginning.
Yeah.
So let me get to the next one. So this is Gardenian Bloom. I have many questions, but I shall only ask a few. How many? Let me just... Okay, there's a few there. Why the pygmies short when they're getting enough animal foods?
Truth is, no one knows why they're short, but they're not going to be short much longer. Each generation is much taller. They're intermarrying with neighboring tribes that are tall. And so you can actually see with each generation, it almost looks like you put them on stairs. They're becoming normal height. So
I have a hypothesis. I have a hypothesis of mine. I'll just go for it. It's like, for instance, the Chinese. They had periods when they were deprived from a lot of foods for a very, very long time. Again, the Japanese as well, from animal foods for a number of reasons. You know, climate change. It can be the climate is always changing, but things like this, and can limit certain food sources for a long period of time, and that can, over generations, cause dwarfism. You know, or you get it on islands like in the Pacific and places like that, where people are isolated, have very little access, and people become shorter as a consequence because of calorie restrictions because of their environment. And I think there may have been in the past, for whatever reason, wars, environmental reasons or whatever, where the calorie restriction was quite severe for a number of generations, and actually really caused these genetic changes. It's a bit like warfare. If you take a look at parts of the world where they've had constant warfare for a very long time, you find far more shorter people for the same reason, because of multiple generations of low calorie intake and the consequence of that. And they can become fatter as well. They can become sicker as well, much faster for that reason as well. But getting back to, I think that there may be another reason also, that some of the food sources in their environment may be low in leucine as well. So the meats that they access may be potentially, so multiple generations of lower calories that restricted that height, and then on top of that, low leucine type sources, because not all animal foods are high in leucine. I know that pork is quite low in comparison to other meats, and a lot of Asians consume that for a long time as well as their primary source of meat. So I'm guessing. What do you think?
I think that's a very good educated guess. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
Anyway, we'll move to the other one. Do the Maasai women and children drink blood too? I know that one.
Yes, they do, and a lot of it. Yes. Mm-hmm.
They've got to get their electrolytes as well, guys.
That's right.
And they would have worked out, if this works for the men, it must work for the women and kids, and it must be required for them as well, because they would have got sick very quickly. Now, next one. Women aren't hunting. How do they stay fit?
To be honest, when your diet is good, your body stays fit. You don't have to exercise your way to being thin and fit in general. They are constantly squatting, standing up, squatting while cooking, doing all sorts of things. They carry the children everywhere. So their bodies are kind of designed for it, actually. And it's a bit of labor in certain groups. For instance, like in the Datoga, who grind the grain, the millet, I did that. That's some good work that they're doing there. Exactly. Yeah. So,
but sitting around, guys.
Yes. Yeah. But no one does organized exercise. So one of the questions just coming down is, do they lift things, and do they do push-ups and these? No, that's not done anywhere. I really think a lot of that came out of some of the warrior type cultures. Our warriors, whatever society you're from, always did that kind of stuff in European cultures. Yep. But these guys do more physical challenges like hunting and that kind of thing. So no, you don't see anyone doing push-ups. There were some elders that like to run up hills in the Maasai, but I think they did that mostly to kind of prove their bravado to everyone on a daily basis. Like, hey, I still got it. So it wasn't so much to get muscles or something like that, or to lose weight. There's no weight to lose. You don't hear anyone talking about their weight until you get into the cities where people have become obese. And they really want to lose weight, or they think they have to exercise, or like our guide, Richard, who you'll see his trajectory. He's lost about half his body weight since we saw him. He was quite overweight, and he just could not believe when we told him to eat nothing but meat as his diet, because his sister, who's a doctor, and his doctor told him to eat a ton of fruit. But on the fruit and plant diet, he was gaining a lot of weight. And so we had him do the opposite, and he's just melting. So people are very surprised. They really are trying to lose weight. They're being given the wrong information, and you see that there, but not in the tribes, to answer your questions.
Next one. Any signs of calculus?
None.
Do they avoid the sun? Unlikely.
I would say the opposite. They're in the sun most of the time. Mm-hmm. And they don't wear, I should say more too. They're not wearing hats. They're not putting things on their skin to cover themselves. They don't wear many clothing unless it's part of the culture to do so. So in general, most of their skin is exposed to the sun, and they're not looking to sit in the shade so much. I saw the Hudso when they were hunting, they would go pick a shady spot to sit, but they're not ever hiding from the sun. It's more that's a cool place, right? It's less hot. So really mostly in the sun most of the day.
See, guys, if you're an exhibitionist like me, it's the perfect place to go and live.
It is, yes.
I'm intrigued by the nursing mothers post 50. Do you think, what do you think is driving menopause much earlier in the West?
Happy to speak to that. Both that and the earlier menstruation by women, along with all the hormonal disease from breast cancer in females to endometriosis, PCOS, infertility. All of this is due to either excess hormones or poor hormone production. So either the person is overproducing insulin in the body and the ovaries are picking up on that excess insulin. They have thousands of insulin sensors. You would think they have nothing to do with it, but they actually have a lot, because it's the ovary's job to decide if it's a good time to have a child. And they're actually doing this from the time females are born until we die. Menopause has nothing to do with it. The ovaries are always sensing insulin. And when they sense too much insulin, they say, okay, not a good time to have children. So they'll overproduce a hormone. It will either be androgens or estrogen or both. If it's androgens, you get PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and you get a furry chin. If you get an acne, typically this acne on a female has become normal, and it's very abnormal. It's a sign of excess.
It's a male thing.
That's right. That's right. And then with estrogen, it's more likely to be endometriosis or estrogen-based cancers, but it also gives PMS. PMS is very abnormal. We should not have an odd mood around or before a cycle. That's very unhealthy, actually. And for some people, in fact, many people in the carnivore community, let's say, or a ketogenic community, anyone who's eating less carbs, they're not going to be overproducing estrogens anymore or progesterones or these kind of things. But some people don't have phase 2, phase 3 detox channels open in the liver. And for those folks, the issue is not overproduction, it's a lack of clearing. So it's a bit like a bathtub with a drip that's clogged. Maybe there's just a little trickle coming in, but over time, that bathtub will fill up. And so there are people like that. And so if you hear from someone in a group who did carnivore, maybe it reversed all their health conditions, but they're having hormonal issues a year in or a year and a half in, or it's just not fully fixed. That's that group. They're just not clearing that, and they need to open phase 2 and phase 3, or use some, if they've already reset the microbiome, they can use the soluble nutrients to bind to the excess hormones and pull them out via the bile. So there's options for those. But I think that's why we're having such both early menopause and painful menopause. You know, menopause should not be a torture sentence. It should actually be very easy. Like when my mom went through it, she was great. My mom, though, was great hormonally. I have to say, like she was very healthy. But that's really how it's supposed to be for everyone. Maybe you lose some hair, but you shouldn't have moods and hot sweats and night sweats and all these kinds of things when you go through menopause. And it really shouldn't be happening when you're young. It should be happening later. Part of that, I think, evolutionarily speaking, is because estrogen for us, it's our antiviral. It's what keeps us alive in times of mass infections. And so it doesn't behoove us to start to have low estrogen like we do after menopause.
Yeah, and the other thing is that to a large extent, you can normalize. I usually try and get people on boron for a short amount of time to basically normalize their estrogen levels, and then sort of focus on the detox, because it depends on the because some people have like myself, very high detoxification capacity, others don't.
Others don't.
And so
a lot of people who have been chronically ill don't. And this really applies to
sulfur
men as
becomes
well.
a big issue.
Yes, because for men, you guys tend to everybody has low testosterone these days. And it's very common for men to not have a sex drive or to not wake up with a hard-on, but it's become normal. And none of that is normal. It's really not, nor is this prostate cancer explosion. And that is a very similar issue to what the females are having, in that for men, it's usually caused by excess estrogen, which drives their testosterone down. And although we think of testosterone culturally as being an aggressive hormone, it's actually the opposite. It is men's relaxation hormone. It's what makes you into statesmen and good character, whereas estrogen makes you impatient and temperamental. So you can almost see it in our culture, the increase of this kind of temperament along with the sex issues. I see them even in young boys. I see them in teenagers and 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds having issues with sex drive and testosterone.
Well, I'm hearing young men actually going in for things like Viagra. I'm not kidding you. I'm shocked about the whole thing. Where I know that from my own self, when back when I was quite unhealthy, I wasn't getting the same sort of effects as well. And now I'm 15 years older, and I wake up in the morning. Yes, it's quite firm. Let's put it that way.
And that's a sign of health for you all. So you actually, like, if you're male, you want to look at that, and if it's not there, then something needs to be worked on or fixed. Yes.
Yeah, precisely. And I think it's fundamental, the diet we have and stuff like that, when it comes to I mean, I use a lot of things like taurine because it does decline after 50, as you know, to keep up the detoxification. Probably other people in other areas probably need a bit more because they're living in far more toxic environments than I am in Tasmania, which isn't as bad. It's always going to be slightly different, and it's sort of hard to work out exactly. I always. What about yourself? Do you actually end up asking people exactly where they live? I do.
Yes, always. Yeah, and also where they've lived and where they've traveled, because all of that can tell me if they've picked up some kind of microbe, what kind of toxins they had in their water supply, and also in their food in general. Like I'm sure you guys have gotten into this, but with the granite the granite makeover of all the kitchens, that actually causes issues. There's a lot of uranium in granite, right? So even the way that someone furnishes their house or cooks can really impact them as well.
That's true. That's exactly right. Anyway, let's move to the next one, which was any sign of myopia or presbyopia?
No side issues at all. No one has it.
Yep. I didn't think so. I may not make the live, but yeah. Thanks in advance. He's just saying thanks in advance so we'll move on to Fizz, F-I-Z. See, the Changa were grinding grains. Did they add sand or anything like that similar to ancient Egyptians? Did any of the African tribes consume rotten, dried meats or fresh?
Great question. So, okay, I didn't see any sand being used with any of the grain processing. Grain processing wasn't a major part of any of these groups, but some of them consume some, and I did take part in that. And no sand was used, but I don't know if that's done year round. Maybe they use the sand during certain seasons. That's possible.
Okay.
The rotten meats, no, everyone used fresh. I do know many cultures, especially up north, and I'm hoping to go up to the Nordic cultures soon. I have some friends there that live up by the Sami cultures. I'd like to go up there, but no one did rotten. Everything was very, very fresh. Nothing was fermented. And I actually think, and I know this question is coming later, but I'm going to slip it up anyway. A lot of people are asking about the Maasai and why they don't do the milk and the meat together, and if it's because they intuitively know about the Randall cycle or if it's something else. They probably do, but also they consume everything very fresh. So when they kill an animal, they're going to want to get all their calories from that. They want to eat it like start to finish, and then they want to take a break from that because it's more work to slaughter an animal than to get the milk from the cow. So then they're going to do the milk for a couple of days. So it could be an intuitive thing. I mean, what I've seen in all of these cultures is they intuitively nail it for perfect health. Whatever they're doing, there's a reason. But it's also a bit of convenience as well.
Yeah, I've always said that there's probably both necessity and potentially they may have noticed something in the past, and that sort of they may not understand the Randall cycle. Well, many modern academics and doctors don't anyway, let alone or know about it exactly. Unlike poor Philip Randall published it. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, Sam Sung was just asking a great question about phytoestrogens and if they help with viruses. Ironically, no. So phytoestrogens come in packages with a lot of arginine with them, and arginine feeds viruses. So soy is a very arginine-rich food, so I would not eat, personally, I would not go towards soy in a time of a viral epidemic for that reason, amongst other reasons. Soy is also a very fatty lectin source. So although it has some of the soluble fibers and the estrogens, it tends to be more problematic. In general, what you want to do instead of getting estrogens from food or hormones from food or supplements, you want to balance out your body's own hormonal system and help pull out some of the excess toxins so that you can make it all in harmony. That's really ideal because they're all connected. And so artificially taking one or the other can really throw off the whole kit and caboodle.
In regards to that, also Sam I'll just put on the screen, had a question about cyanide-rich foods, who munching on cherry seeds and stuff like that. Did you notice any of that sort of behavior or practices?
No, the only one I saw was the cassava, but different strains of cassava have different amounts of cyanide.
That's right.
they were also eaten by groups that eat a lot of meat. Meat is their primary food, and the sulfur-based amino acids actually protect against cyanide poisoning.
That's true.
Now, yes, and what I mostly saw the cassava cooked, and then all the fiber taken away and then sucked. That was mostly how I saw it consumed, in which case all of that would lower the cyanide content, and they were eating baboon alongside it. So, or another animal dictic. It depended on the day, but they were always eating animal on that same day. It was interesting, though, I'll tell you, because there is, if any of you guys are interested in fertility and the infertility wave, there's a myth going around, or at least a wives' tale, that cassava makes you more likely to have twins. And part of that is because Nigeria is the world's richest area for having twins. It's the most likely you have twins if you're Nigerian. And they attributed that potentially towards the cassava plant. However, and even if you go on Amazon and look at cassava supplements, which why someone would take that as a supplement, I'll never understand. You can just eat it, but people do. And if you read the reviews, a lot of people will say, I had twins, I got pregnant, I couldn't get pregnant before. So I had known about that when I went in and saw the Hadza eating the cassava, and I was asking everyone about twins, and twins are just nowhere to be found. Granted, it's a small sampling because each of the groups that I visited, they're just clans of 30, and that's pretty typical. You don't usually see clans over that size, but yeah, interesting.
So basically, people are peddling a supplement based on association. Wonderful.
Yes, and I'm starting to think it's not true despite all those reviews. Who knows? Who knows? Bjorn is asking about. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yep, he's basically asking about whether they eat raw meat.
Yes, yeah, they do. So let me see if it was every single one. The Maasai, definitely. I ate a lot of raw organ meats with them. I didn't eat raw muscle meat with them. They didn't serve that up. They cooked the muscle meat. Same with the Hadza. Lots of raw organ meats, but the muscle meat was cooked. The Chaga did not serve any raw meat, but I would be surprised if they didn't. I'd be really surprised if they didn't. All of the cultures I've been to, traditional cultures, do some raw meats, whether it's raw egg yolks, raw dairy, specifically raw organs are the most common. And then in Ethiopia, tartar is very common. So there you do get the muscle meat. Same with many parts of South America, you get the muscle meat as well.
Anyway, let's move on. Now there's another one. Did any of the tribes do push-ups, squats, lift rocks, or do any exercise just like normal, like idiots in the West, I would say?
Yeah, literally no one. No.
Exactly. They have natural movements. They don't do isolated movements, which do have advantages if you're trying to build your body up in a certain way for competition, but they do have some deleterious long-term effects as well, because they create certain the way your muscles are actually designed to basically, if you look at a tribal person, there is a certain type of similar way morphology of how the muscles develop based on meat and stuff that they eat traditional foods, where these unusual growths are due to basically people trying to push up insulin in a certain way. I'll go into that. It's the reason why younger bodybuilders are dying in their 30s and 40s nowadays. But that's it for another day to go into that. So it's really bad, and it's become toxic, that community.
I'll say what I've seen. I think a lot of the exercise people do now is a counteraction to our lack of movement and our poor diets. But when I work with someone who can't exercise for some reason, let's say they are recovering from a broken hip, we can still get them back to what they looked like in college and high school as an athlete without them exercising. So I use exercise in my practice mainly to move the lymph system and get the body moving and to remember what it's like. But it's not when you have a proper diet, it's not as important as it is for us who really have to do everything to get our bodies healthy.
Rebecca's got a question. Do the Maasai ever eat seafood?
Never. They're so against it. They're very against seafood. They're also very against chicken as well. And, in some regions, this was due to political things, not with the Maasai, but with other groups. So when I was in Uganda, Rwanda, the people in Rwanda will not eat the fish, and it would be easy to go there and think that that was for a health reason, but it's not. It's because their dead got thrown into the sea during the genocide, and so they feel if they eat fish, they're eating, their ancestors, their grandmother, right? These kind of things. So it's not always for a health reason. For the Maasai, very often it's out of pride, and a healthy pride, a very like regal pride as to why they don't do things. It's more out of like, I don't.
Is it we've got our own animals. We don't need to basically sort of, because some of their myths, the other tribes were given that role to take from the land, from the wilderness. For them, it was to herd animals and basically extract the nutrients from those. So there are cultural traditions which have served them very well, which is
that's exactly it. They don't have a need to get wild food because they have everything. They raise everything, and they're quite proud of that. Mm-hmm.
Precisely. Anyway, next one. Misleading states that are ignoring the realities you managed to not overlook as honest mistakes. So I suspect, because you've talked about some of the way the studies have been designed in the past and stuff like that.
Happy to speak on that. I think we all have to decide that for ourselves. I feel that for me, getting angry about things is a waste of time and usually not very productive in general. And I think very often it's a very human thing to do as to how they got there or why they're there. And we all learn things at different phases. So I prefer to see it from that bigger lens. I also find in working with my clients, it's much easier to talk to them from a reasonable standpoint like that instead of to go on attack. I find it's far more successful with conversion to get people to do the diets that I need them to do to get them better. If I go in, if I'm talking to someone, say from the Midwest like I am, who really believes in Western medicine and that anything published is gold, if I go in from a very reasonable standpoint, which I do agree with, that these people really meant well. It was a theory. It's been disproven and these kind of things. Or from the standpoint, which it can also be, of that we, at least in America, these things are industries, and an industry's main goal is financial. It's not to ruin people. It's not to make people sick, but it is financial. And when you have the primary goal is financial, you don't get health, right? You don't get perfect health. So
you get a product. In that regard, Kate just said thank you. So but the book writer has actually asked about the Brockport tribe of Latha. I think that's how it's spelled, Ladak or something like that. For example, who thrived while eating a plant-based diet for more than 5,000 years. Does she know anything about this tribe? I've never heard of the tribe. 5,000 years just on plants, unlikely. They would have been eating some other animal foods, but have you heard of this tribe?
I haven't, so I can't speak to them. Where is that region? Ladakh? Is that maybe Afghanistan? I know there's a tribe in Afghanistan that's similar to the one in Costa Rica, so that's a potential. I would need to know their diet to say, but... And where are they?
Eastern region of Kashmir.
Kashmir, okay.
So it's a small community there. Like. It's a community of dark people, D-A-R-D, Dard people. But
would you Google their diet for me? And while you do that, I'll answer Dominic's question about the Maasai. The Maasai don't almost never drink alcohol. It's really just for those celebrations that happen maybe once a year. And it's a honey. It's like a mead. It's like a honey drink, a fermented honey drink. I didn't see them use any poison of choice. They were not like some of the other groups that do imbibe in a poison, whether it's smoking something or something else. The Maasai live a very clean life.
Well, they say that in the past they were vegan, but they're no longer vegan because of climate change and all that. But that's not recent. some claim have been vegan for 2,200 years of their existence, but there's no real proof. This is a lot of talk about the past. So I'd have to really look into it properly.
For this because, to my knowledge, and I know, I mean, I live in this field. To my knowledge, there's never been a vegan group, and part of that is because we see, at least in animal experiments, by the third generation, we start to see infertility with that kind of diet. So I highly doubt they're vegan. What they could be is like the Costa Rican Peninsula group that eats about 90% of their diet from carbohydrates. You can get away with that because you're eating a lot of soluble fibers with them. The soluble fiber would bind to the toxins, and they have a tribal microbiome that none of us have anymore. We all have a modern microbiome now. So you're going to get a very different picture with that kind of diet. But I'll look it up and let you guys know what I think.
And just because you can actually live on something like that, it doesn't basically mean I look at a lot of these groups and I don't really see sort of the longevity health that you see in other groups that are eating animal foods.
And also, we have to dig further because a quick search of like the Maasai will say that they only live for 45 years, but that's actually like a maybe well-intentioned vegan propaganda site because that's not the case. They do not have a lifespan of 45 years, just like maybe this isn't actually a vegan diet. So we need to dig.
And the thing is, we know George V. Mann, who actually went to the Maasai and did research, and is considered one of the greatest sort of researchers, field researchers in the world of that time. So he wasn't some nobody, and he basically demonstrated that the Maasai, even older men in their 80s and 90s, basically had the similar blood pressure to younger people, that a lot of the biomarkers that they were actually measuring are very similar. That tells you that basically the diet isn't basically progressively causing greater illness, and these people can live into ripe old age in a very healthy state. Now, whether they live to become centenarians or not, there's a lot of factors environmental. They do live in a much more hostile environment than somebody living in a city where they're not coming into effect with all sorts of nasties like crocodiles and cats of different sorts and all sorts of other things. The potential to cut yourself severely and harm yourself or injure yourself, and you don't have modern medicine, bleed to death. There's all sorts of things that can happen.
That is true. Although I will say, I mean, with everyone I talk to, and of course that's only who I talk to, but their relatives all just die from old age, going to sleep in old age. So, but that can definitely happen. I mean, one of the guys we interviewed had been trampled by an elephant, and his leg looked like he had come across shrapnel. So, can I please answer this one? I would love to answer this one.
Okay, go right ahead.
All right. I'm not a huge fan of these the gut healing supplements used in medicine. I think in functional medicine, one of the biggest one is L-glutamine, and L-glutamine has quite a few problems that come along with it. Glutamate is one of the foods for cancer. Glutamine is also constipating, which many people have an issue with already. But I think my biggest problem with the supplements used in functional medicine, especially for gut healing, is that unless you have an entire lifestyle and dietary makeover, the supplements are just a waste of money in my book. Yeah, I think this idea that you can just take a supplement like a medicine, it's very Western medicine minded, like just take this medicine and don't change or make modest changes is rather ineffective. So I tend to get people that have just spent enormous amounts of money on supplements and done all these protocols and feel burnt out, but they've never actually done a big diet change. Maybe they've pulled out gluten, or they've gone more plant-based, or they've gone semi-low carb, but not enough. So I think it's a shame. Actually, I think it's just not enough. And coming from having to reverse really serious things, you really often have to do way more than they ask their patients to do. So, which maybe they don't know. But yeah, I'm not a fan about those. Okay, and then any questions about that before we go on to
there was basically about those the plant toxins and the legumes and all that sort of stuff, and then talking about the FODMAP diet, he's asking about, and also many people find that doing ketogenic carnivore diet for a few years, they need carbohydrates to feel best. Do you think this is based on genetics? Are there any tribes or cultures that don't consume carbohydrates at any time of the year? Well, we know the Inuit that are living very close to the Arctic don't.
Yeah, you see that in the Arctic regions. You can be healthy on either, but we've got a different story for us. We're in a pretty toxic environment. Even if we try to clean up everything, like you stop buying anything but cotton and silk, right? So you're not wearing plastics and absorbing those, and you switch your containers to glass, and you cook only in traditional cookware. Like you can only do so much, but you've still got toxins in the air, and you've got the stress toxins of living in an unnatural life. And frankly, none of us are living in mud huts. There's a lot of industrial toxins in our furniture, in our bedding, and all of these kinds of things. So while going carnivore is often a lifesaver and can be necessary, it doesn't always work long-term for everyone if they're not clearing their toxins. Now, all the people I know that always traditionally taught any of these major diets, from carnivore, GAPS, ketogenic, always implemented a daily detoxification routine as well. And that would often be lifestyle, like sweating if you're healthy enough, or a hot sauna bath or a sauna, exercising to the point that you sweat, something to bring some toxins out through the skin. It's not a juice cleanse. Nobody needs to go and do that. But the other thing can be what I discussed earlier with the hormones recirculating and other toxins. You may need something to bind to those. So if you survive on the carnivore diet for 1 to 2 years, that's great, right? Because then you can reset that microbiome. And then what you may be needing is a removal of toxins from that point, because that's something that protein and fat doesn't do. And also, in addition, you may need to start feeding some of the good bacteria. You may feel better with that. I do find some people do at that point, but not early on. So you can't do it early, because then those foods can feed the bacterial overgrowth. But once you've reset your microbiome, you can start to bring in some of the traditional starches like the green banana, the plantain, these kind of things, and see how you do with them. That's going to be very case by case. I think it has nothing to do with genetics at all. I think it has to do with your toxin load and your bacteria and how your lifestyle is going.
Yeah, there's going to be always differences between different groups. I mean, I usually tend to put people, I make sure that they're getting enough vitamin D, whether from the sun or supplements or whatever, that they maintain their vitamin D levels, because at the end of the day, your gut microbiome is as good as your vitamin D status. Simple as that. There is no argument. That is, the literature is quite convincing as far as I'm concerned. The relationships between a good microbiome and vitamin D status is the most important thing. And the other thing is, are you getting enough sulfur amino acids? And I'm not only talking about just methionine. The biggest thing is, we're not getting enough of the other sulfurs, and that's a big problem as well. I mean, I usually talk about MSM. I talk about, taurine as being very important. You're getting older, you're not producing enough, and you're not in a clean environment. These people are old. They're getting, even though their taurine levels may be declining as biosynthesis, they are not living in an environment where you've got a lot of toxins and bioaccumulating. And remember, most of you guys have just come to the carnivore diet or a clean diet very recently. You've had about 2 to 3 decades where you've bioaccumulated a lot of crap into your fat cells. And each time you basically try to lose a bit of weight or whatever, you're releasing a lot of crap. It's the reason why I talk about, stored oxidized PUFA, low dose vitamin E, the Jarrow one, to bind and deal with that. It's not accidental. Inflammation goes up. Where somebody who would be on a Maasai diet, who may seasonally do certain things, or somebody else, what they're going to do is, when they do release free fatty acid, a lot of it's going to be saturated, and a lot of it's basically going to be non-inflammatory. So they're not going to be having these problems. So when people talk about free fatty acid being a problem, it's because it's all the rancid oils that they've been consuming for decades and decades, stored in their fat cells with a whole lot of other chemicals and crap that are being released at the same time, and they wonder why they're getting all these strange effects. It's because what you've done in the past, you are paying in the future. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. It's like my oxalate dumping. That was really enjoyable for the last couple of years. I can tell you.
Sorry. That's never fun.
No.
So maybe we should go back into the plant toxins with the bit of time that we have left. All right. So, oh wait, scroll back up because there were more questions in there, and it was very interesting. If you don't mind, because those are some great questions. Okay, so plant toxicity spectrum, it's a bit different by person. In general, I'm not a fan of the nightshades across the board. They're far worse than something like a legume or a nut, because legumes and nuts, at least you can reduce the plant toxin load, whereas with nightshades, you really can't reduce solanine. It's very difficult to reduce solanine. And it's fat soluble, so it has a very long half-life, whereas something like a lectin is anywhere from 1 day to 14 in your body. A solanine is more like 30, so it's much harder to get out. Seeds I'm not too big of a fan of. Usually plants produce those in order to have babies, so they have a lot of protective mechanisms around. So I don't tend to use seeds at all. I'm fine with the brassicas as long as they're cooked, honestly. I mean, of course, it depends by person, but a healthy person should have no issue with brassicas. And if they do, they likely are having a sulfur issue that they need to get at. And very often that's a thiamine deficiency. Same with allium. So if I had to rank them, I'll go from worst to better. It would be nightshades would be the worst, followed by seeds, then legumes, then nuts, grains, and I wouldn't even put brassica leaves and allium in there. They're fine if they're eaten in season in my book, as long as you're healthy. So their toxins are a bit less. Of course, the spinach is an issue with the oxalates. Let's talk about FODMAP quickly, because that's super interesting. I do use the FODMAP diet. I do not couple it with starches. The FODMAP diet is a bit of a Band-Aid diet. It doesn't get you better. It just makes you feel better while you do it. And so it has to be coupled with something that's going to shift your microbiome and address as to why there's the bacteria in the small intestine and why it's eating food that it shouldn't be able to eat. And so I'm always combining that with either like a GAPS or an SCD or a carnivore or one of these kind of diets in order to get at the cause. You know, for SIBO, the cause can be histamine disorders, which are treated very differently than someone who just had a post-infectious SIBO. So I always get at the cause, or maybe it's an ileocecal valve issue, right? And so you've got to get at the ileocecal valve. So I use FODMAP, but it's never, I try not to teach any of the diets that don't fully heal someone, you know, and I would consider the FODMAPs not falling into that category. So I always, when I teach it in combination with another one. I think those are all the questions from that one.
Well, we've covered that. We'll move on.
Good.
So, you know how lifting weights improves bones and muscle density, etc. I've been wondering, what are these African tribes doing for dental care? Are they chewing some hard stuff for dental bone and muscle strength?
Yeah, I would say their dental care comes mostly from their diet. They eat a lot of organ meats, and that really helps to keep the parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system balanced, which gets at the pH. And if you have your pH good, you're going to have really good dental health along with your fat-soluble vitamins. So they all eat appropriately. Some of the Hadza group had a tree, not all the clans, but some of them had a little tree that they would break a leaf off of, or a stem, not a leaf, and pick at their teeth. And it was microbial. It was an antimicrobial tree, but that's not actually common. The Maasai also do something similar. In fact, one of the boys that we met, he was about 21, and he had brought his toothbrush into town, and everyone thought he was so strange for using this twig instead of, you know, the plastic bristles and toothpaste. They don't put something on it. They just use this plant, but it's very effective. I used it, and it was great. It was really great.
Oh, that's great. The other thing I did notice, some of the African women, they jump up and down. That sort of impact exercising. Yes. That's good for the bones as well. I've read that dogs get some protection from a fatty layer on their skin, and washing may get them sick. How do these African tribes care for the skin? I imagine they never use soap. Are they using only watered? Do you think water only would keep some protective layer?
Love to speak to this. So what I've found, even just working in my practice, not just with the tribes, is that when your microbiome is healthy, you have no scent, you don't smell, and you don't get dirty. So you don't actually require, meaning you don't produce, you're not in, improperly producing sebum, right? Our sebum layer is what regulates our oil in the skin. And these folks have never used soap. They don't make soap. They don't use it. And they're not greasy and they're not dirty. Of course, if they go run around in the dirt, they'll have a thin layer of dirt, but it's not skin deep. It's not sticking or thick where you like scratch your skin and it's under your nails kind of thing. So they also don't have a scent. They don't even, like, literally no scent. Even the kids who keep wearing the same clothes over, they have to wear these school uniforms. So they wear them until they just tatter, because none of these groups are on a financial system. So buying a school outfit is kind of crazy, to them to
Exactly.
find that money. So they look tattered, they look poor, even though they actually have better lives than we do. And it's because their clothes are starting to fall apart, but those kids never wash those clothes and they don't smell. They literally never smell. And you see that when people get a healthy microbiome. Like I noticed when I went through the GAPS diet, I had no need for deodorant anymore or anything else, not even like switching to a natural. You just don't need it. Your feet don't get stinky, you don't have bad breath. That kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore. That can take a long time. So if you're on a medical diet and you're still doing that, don't take that as a sign that, something's wrong. It can take a long time to shift your microbiome in that way, but they don't really have a need for soap. So no, they have just perfect skin, and the sebum layer should be doing that for us as well. If any of you need to work on that, there's something in egg yolk that actually helps us rebuild our sebum layer, and you can put that on as a mask and let it dry once to twice a week, and that can be helpful. But yeah, skin should be in perfect condition. Without using it.
I've noticed myself when I consume more eggs. It's a bit different.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Probably only do like one or two questions because I have to get going for the Easter party.
Okay, salt, how much? How often? So there's the salt question.
Sure. Salt is used differently by each group. Some, like the Maasai, most likely get it from their herb, the root herb, and then also the blood. And then it really had to do with their geography, to be perfectly honest, if they used salt or not. So the Batwa use it a lot. They're by salt flats. It's easy for them to get and they love it. The Hadza will use it if you give it to them, but they're not seeking it out and they don't think about it otherwise. The Maasai will not use it, and the Chaga will. So it all really depends.
I'll get one quickly in from Don about how well cooked is their meat dishes typically?
Yeah, so very cooked. Very cooked and a bit rubbery. And the question above that was a good one as well. How is the health, how's the endurance of the 60s, 70s, 80-year-olds? They're just as healthy as the 30-year-olds.
Okay. Let's just see. There was one here. Has there ever been a case of diabetes 1?
No.
I've never heard of either. Something like that.
Yeah.
Looks like to know that the Maasai eat what do they eat during a milk day? Do they just eat milk, nothing else, and blood?
Yeah, they just have milk to satiety. So I know a lot of people were like, gosh, is it only 2 cups? Is it this much? It depends. It's just if they're hungry or not. But 2 cups is the general. And maybe they'll have 2 more cups later in the day, or even up to 3 times. But it's very filling with the blood. So you don't really need much food on those days.
What is the mechanism thereby posture affects serotonin?
That's pretty complicated. So I would jump into some biochemistry books if you're interested in that. But it's fascinating. And that's actually, it was posture studies from the lobsters as to how that was discovered. The lobsters have a very similar neurological system to what we do as humans. And they found, do you guys know about the lobster fights that have been done in studies?
I've heard of them.
Okay. So I won't go into that, but that's how that was discovered. And after that, they started looking at it in humans and also found it to be true. So you'd have to jump into some books for that, but I suggest you do because it's pretty fascinating.
I know a lot of our sitting has a big effect, and that's what we're doing right now, but it does have a big effect. And also how the way their J curve of their spine is much different than ours. and also they tend to, the way they move, they tend to squeeze their glutes far more. It's a sort of a
They are the
natural
best
movement.
squatters in the whole world. In fact, here in South Africa, I've noticed, because in the cities you see quite heavy people, like I've mentioned, and there was a woman who was very obese the other day with a baby, and she was sitting on the ground with her legs straight out, and her posture was impeccable. Really incredible. And for someone of that size, that takes a lot of muscle to be able to do, and a lot of habit. So they just innately have excellent posture. And I think part of that is not using chairs. There's nowhere to slouch, right? And also due to pride in the body as opposed to pride in the home. There's less pride in the home, more pride in the body in many of these areas. And so you conduct yourself very well.
Yeah, I try to force myself to do a bit of squatting now and then. It's not a thing that I've grown up doing. I've sort of picked up that habit in Southeast Asia, but it's not something naturally that I've always sort of gravitated towards doing. But I try to incorporate a bit in the day. Sometimes even at work, I'm in the stairwell. I've done a bit of a run up the stairs, and then I'll do some squats at the end. And sometimes people that know me come out and go, "Harry, what are you doing?" Just keep going. I'm doing some exercise, squats. So,
somebody's asking if I can talk about Dick. I'm happy to talk about Dick. What's your question about it? It tastes great, by the way. It tastes a bit like venison. It's very good.
Okay.
The organ tastes very good as well. Mm-hmm.
That is quite interesting. This one, in the interview with the Hadza, had perfect glucose levels. Could you put a number on that, please?
They didn't actually. Not all of them did. So most of them did. The chief did not. So what I would consider perfect blood sugar is 84. Anything from like 70 to 90 is excellent, I would say. 84 is perfect. That's what I'm always shooting for with people. And that's fasting, of course. That's in the morning. So that's typically what range they were in, anywhere from there.
This one's an interesting one. Sleep, wake, especially how it relates to hours of light and darkness, circadian rhythms. I've talked about tribal population, people staying up late. Like there's genes for 50% that basically used to be watch or lookouts or whatever they're called. Same every day. Are there early birds and night owls in the tribal populations that if you've noticed?
No, I don't see them at all. Yeah, I actually don't.
Okay.
But maybe I will as I continue. I think you'd see that more with people migrating, I would think. And also, like for instance, with the Maasai in certain regions, lions are a real issue. That's why they have to learn hunting. But they know when a lion is coming by 3 kilometers. It's really incredible how they know these things, but they do. And so they'll have a watchman out, and they'll have people guarding wherever I'm sleeping. Like if I'm in a mud hut, they'll have someone out guarding. But they're not naturally that way. They're doing that for the protection of the group, and they rotate who does that. Naturally, they all fall asleep easily and wake up in the morning, and no one is groggy. No one needs anything to wake up. They don't have that like sleep in their eyes. They're not slow to wake. They don't, need to sit there for a while and take in the day before they can enter a conversation. They're all very perky first thing in the morning.
Anyway, there's another one here. How much functionality did the older members keep in their 60s, 70s, and the 80s group? So in terms of body and brain function? Full
function. Completely full function. The only difference I saw was in the Hadza after you turn about 60, 65, you usually stop hunting. But I think that's more out of respect instead.
There's another one here about coffee while visiting the Jaga tribe. Can you give us info on the bean to cup, how they roast, grind, brew their coffee? I'm especially interested in the brewing part since the fat-soluble compounds. So that's cafestol and suspected to raise cholesterol. Where they talk about that cholesterol can be raised slightly from coffee.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen coffee raise cholesterol or that to be an issue, but I do know what you're speaking of. You know what I'd have to do? I'd have to ask them because it wasn't the time when they were roasting, so I didn't get to see that. But I am great friends with a couple of them, and I can text them easily. So
Easy. We could keep that for another day. That question. This one from
and
Bert.
this one should be the last one. So
I'll leave this as last. Yes.
Okay.
Well, with people living in the Western world having houses next to busy roads, pumping up pollution, living next to cell towers, electricity hubs, is there a point where the diet can only do so much? Not so much a question, your thoughts, and this compared to a tribe in Africa, is there value valuable, but it's not quite apples to apples. He thanks me. Should thank Mary as well. Edit the above. Worded Paul here. What can we take away from the tribal environment in regards to environmental pollution? Perhaps buying smaller house away from the main road, cell tower electricity hubs is a better choice in the long run for health. Let's not forget all the furniture that is actually gassing off a whole lot of things. I'll add that in myself. I'll let you answer.
Sure. Yeah, I really haven't seen anything that can't be positively influenced by drastically changing your diet and lifestyle. And I think what studying these tribes does is let you know what's possible for the human condition and what you should accept and what you shouldn't accept as normal. I think over focusing on things we can't control, things that are out of our control, is an unneeded stress. So what I tell my patients is focus on everything you can take responsibility for, and anything you can't, don't worry about. We are in a soup, so don't sweat it. But to be honest, so are the polar bears. You know, you test a polar bear's fat and they have heavy metal in them. So there's no way that you can get away from that. Something, once it's in the environment, it's in the environment. But don't use that as an excuse to not get yourself in good health.
That's right.
You really want to look at what you can take responsibility for, change that, and be patient and let your body do the rest of the work.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, we can only do so much, and you're right. I always start first, focus on the diet. That's the most important thing. And then, focus on things like the environmental factors that you can control. And they are going to be circadian, which should be right at the top. Sleep, circadian rhythm should be at the top. You shouldn't be eating later in the evening as a general rule. Occasionally it may happen, friends, relatives, but generally speaking, you should basically really restrict it to not eating 3 to 4 hours before going to bed. And that will literally, because that will then allow that circadian clock to sort of set itself in a certain way. Slowly bring down your sort of digestive system, so you can start relaxing. You've got to relax the body so the body can start healing at night and start repairing itself. You can't have it in overdrive. If you're stuffing it with a whole lot of stuff, your muscles, those nutrients are going to be pushed all over into organs and muscles and all sorts of things. That's going to create a lot of activity, and it's going to make it difficult getting to sleep or getting deep sleep. So very important. I think you would.
The mindset is also an issue. You know, if you want to heal anything, or even if you want to be healthy in this day and age, you kind of have to have a hero's mindset. You don't want to be looking at excuses as to why things can't be good. You want to look for reasons why they can. So I would jump on that mindset and start to look at that.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, I mean, that's where the placebo effect, or the mind-brain connection, how you feel really. And I think the diet helps. Our diet helps. You know, when you're on an ancestral diet,
plus it doesn't keep you from cutting things off, right? If someone has a defeatist look on the situation, like I'll never be as clean as them, so I can't heal, there's no point in trying, then they're never going to do the thing that's necessary to actually get them better. I wouldn't be here today if I had thought that way, right? So you want to think very differently. Very differently. You want to think about anything that you can actually. You
got to think in a more positive way, and and also you need to be. I mean, we're not going to be superhuman, but what we can be is proactive for our own health and basically taking steps to improve it. It's it's not difficult. It's not impossible. I mean, once you get if you can get to a carnivore diet, very few in the Western world can do that. If you can get to that stage, the rest is damn easy, I can tell you. You know,
Yes.
sort out your sleep a bit. And I mean, I'm so calm compared to the past. You know, yes, I had the oxalate dumping that was annoying and a few other things. But once you get over past all that sort of stuff, the calmness that I feel nowadays is really, well, even my friends notice it. They say, Harry, you're so calm. You're so relaxed. You're so chilled out. Where in the past I was sort of hypo, I was sort of, you know, erratic. I could very easily snap at people. I was, you know, I could get angry. I could scream out or do things like that or curse. Where I don't do it nowadays. I'm sort of, people say things and I'm just go, yeah, whatever. You know, I'm just relaxed. I'm just chilled out in a sense.
Yeah.
And the diet has to have something to do with it.
Of course,
as far as I'm concerned,
yeah.
you know, the gabbering, you know, the improvements in GABA, the improvements in just general. I think vitamin D plays a big role as well. The just general, you know, normalization of my hormones and all that have really just made a big difference for me, and I suspect for you as well, Mary.
Oh, completely. Yeah, I feel like a different person on this side of it than I did before. I always smiled. My whole family does. People are always asking why I'm smiling all the time. We all do. And I am, in general, I kind of was always a happy person, but you feel different. You're just calm and emotionally hardy without trying to be.
That's right.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's very different. Yes.
Yeah, we can do, so, you know, weird things. You know, I can run up the you know, the stairs or run up the hill or do things. I'll go, oh yeah, I'll just go for a walk, you know, and it's just, you know, most people just mentally it would have to be like to break through a wall to do that, and for me it's, yeah, I'm, you know, halfway here, I'm doing this, I might as well, you know, it doesn't really get you down or and the nice thing is I really enjoy, even when I do my long walks. I got up in the morning, went down with my friends, and everybody was, where the kids, because they're on carbs and all that. Oh, where's water and all that, you know, about water, where I hadn't even had a drink of water.
Yeah.
And, you know, by the time I got to lunchtime, which was by the time we got down to Salamanca, it was about nearly 2 o'clock nearly. And so I haven't had, since the time I got up until then, not a glass of water. And then I had basically from Michael, who's got a stand there, he makes German sausages, really nice. So we throw away the bun. You know, if Michael's listening to this, sorry, Michael, but we do throw away. And we basically just I usually have some onions and the actual really nice German sausages. He makes the sort of his own design with his own herbs and all that, really nice. And it's got the skin and all that. It's probably done. It's not the crappy stuff. And then basically after that, you know, by the time I get to Sean's place and we sat down to have a barbecue, then I'll probably have you know, some water. So for most of the day, and that's how it is. I don't have this big thirst that I used to. I used to be, when I was on carbs, I was ravenously thirsty.
Oh yeah, it really changes. Yeah, you know, I grew up as an athlete, and so I always had, once high school hit and it was the 90s, I was having water with me all the time or something to drink. And then with POTS and dysautonomia, you're clinically dehydrated. You need an IV on a regular basis, like twice a week. So I just always had these huge glasses of water by me all the time. And now I find I don't have to go to sleep with any water or anything like that. It really changes. I can go on a long road trip and I don't think about packing water or anything else, or snacks or anything else. Yeah, you become more free, I think, from all of those kinds of needs.
That's right.
I wanted to thank everyone for all your nice comments.
I better let you go.
It was a gift of my mom's, actually. My mom and my sisters all have the exact same smile, no braces, no dental work needed. Very lucky. In fact, my teeth were better naturally until I broke my jaw. I had a seizure when I was sick and broke my jaw. And the wiring, see this? It's a little unstable now. There's one that's a little higher. It wasn't like that. So so it's not due to great dentistry. It's honestly luck, and very grateful to my mom. So so don't feel bad for not having braces. I didn't have
I had quite a few crooked teeth and and I still do, and I was a premature child, a 6-month premature child. So I had a number of health issues after bronchitis and stuff like that. So, you know, it wasn't, but I think a lot of the things that helped along the way were a lot of the organ meats and other things that my mother fed me. So she had a really rough pregnancy. And at the time, she, for whatever reason, she was stressed, not eating enough and stuff like that. And I think all these were factors. They were struggling. They'd just come out from Greece. They'd had I was a second child. They were building.
Yes.
I mean, when Mum was pregnant to me, they were actually building the shop. So Mum and Dad were doing cement and moving stuff around and all that. And that's really hard for a pregnant woman to be helping with all that sort of stuff. And she was struggling physically and mentally.
In fact, you see that a lot in all the Greeks that I know that were displaced and had to become refugees during that time. You see it in the children. A lot of times there's height differences. The children can be very short. Well, now they're adults, right? They're in their 70s, right. Some of them, depending on when they fled. So yeah, you definitely see. Yes, yeah. I did. I got the fat soluble vitamin. My mom was a fan of butter, so it helped.
I sort of for all those sort of things due to the multiple generations of, warfare and stuff like that. And most of my family on both sides were involved in a lot of that warfare. So they suffered a lot of deprivation for a lot of those periods.
I know. Draco, my
It's the reason why I can look at a carb and I'll get fat. That's how bad it is.
No, it's true. Because I know Draco's grandmother, she was nursing at the time, and she drank a beer. That was the nutrition she got to try to keep the milk going for his father. And they were, that was the ship over to New Zealand escaping. So yeah, definitely affects folks. All right, well, listen, I have to wrap up.
You have to go. Yes, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
But thank you all so much for having me. This has been so fun. I love answering random questions. It's actually my favorite way to work. So this was just great.
I'm very much off the cuff myself, like you, and I knew you enjoy this sort of a Q&A type style. I'll have to get you back on when you get a chance, because you've got a few stories about the sand people and a few other things that we want to get into as well.
Oh, gosh, yeah, I can't wait to share that. Yeah, it's really quite a story, and I'm hoping it to become more of one. I want to go up into Namibia and Botswana and see those regions as well, because they're quite different.
I'll wait until you get back from those. When are you going exactly? What dates?
I have no idea. It's going to depend on.
You haven't set the dates yet. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, I will touch base with it at some later date, probably sometime later in this month, find out what you're doing, if you've got time or not. Otherwise, we'll leave it for the following month. But take care. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time and literally, answer so many questions and demystify a lot of things that, I've still got a raft of questions, but that's for another time, for another video. So excellent. Thank you for being here. Take care, and see you.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Likewise. Bye.
Bye.
There you go. Mary's gone. Now you're back to me, guys. Oh, unlucky. So I hope you got something out of that, because there was a few things there that I wasn't aware of. Now, there's always little bits of thing that, I know. Yeah, exactly. How crazy is that? That is crazy shit, but it's happening. Younger and younger. It's not accidental. It's the food environment. It's crazy. It was a Freudian slip. I wasn't. Anyway, but it's true. It is different. The performance is better than what it was when I was sicker and younger. That's actually crazy, Bjorn, that basically I'm better now in that performance compared to then. That's how crazy, that is what the difference. You can be older and perform better, and your body can work better. I mean, when I was at 40, I couldn't get up a couple of flights of stairs. And now I can jog up to the 9th floor. I mean, I'm 15 years older. That's the difference. And that's what the diet does. That's what the lifestyle does and all that. I don't think young people realize the damaging, the cumulative damaging effect they're doing to their bodies with all this kibble. And some of them want to go 100, already have gone, the vegans have 100% kibble. I mean, it's just crazy where we're heading. It's a disaster. Yeah, basically, Viagra won't be for the old people; it'll be for the young people because they won't be able to get it up. So crazy, unfortunately, but that's what's happening. Anyway, that brought a smile to Blinky's face. Oh, look, she's busy. Let's be honest. I'd love to get her on a month, on a more regular basis. She would love to as well. She enjoys the sort of banter because it's actually easy for her. Because I can sort of remember when I was doing a lot with Bart coming on and doing the sort of things. That was actually easy because I didn't have to do anything. The other person had to set up everything, whatever. I just had to sit back, just answer questions and stuff like that. And like Mary, because she's got a deep level of a lot of knowledge, like myself, she just can speak off the cuff. She has that sort of public speaking sort of persona, which makes it easy for her. And that's so it's convenient. But at the same time, there's a lot of people out there trying to get interviews with her, as you guys know. It's. I've sort of, you could say I was one of the earliest ones that sort of interacted with her, and as a consequence, she. I'm not saying she feels a loyalty to me, no, not that, but I say that I think she enjoys our chats because they're free flowing, they're easygoing, and they're not as structured. It's just free flowing, really touching on different things, which is sort of a nice thing. We enjoy that style. I enjoy that style. She enjoys that style, and so it's probably that's how we sort of click together really nicely. So yes. Don't touch the soy, Sam. Don't touch the soy. Not even soy sauce. Not even the saucy stuff. Keep the saucy stuff in the cupboard. Yes. Are you talking about xenoestrogens and what they can do to you? Is that what happened to you, Blinky? I know it happens to a lot of frogs. Explains everything. That's something Don would say. I just got in there earlier. This is nothing compared to Sky Server, I can imagine. That's why she sometimes goes off the grid. It can really become... Exactly. I agree, Richard. Let's not. Please not. She doesn't need that sort of environment. Yes, they are. Oh, yes, they are. Somebody's had a bad experience. With this character around, it would definitely be a horror show. You young kiddies are basically, shouldn't be allowed in a lab. Definitely don't introduce this person to a lab. Mate, you don't want to know. You don't want to know, Dom. You want to avoid the place. Oops. I just lost my spot. Damn. What do I do now? I don't know where I am. I'm in Hobart somewhere. Wondering how different in terms of macros their milk is to the stuff we drink. Look, the milk there is far more creamy. You know, remember, they don't siphon off the cream. It's not like milk that you buy from a regular. They siphon off the milk, the cream for cream, so they can sell it. It's nearly 8 o'clock. I have to scull the damn stuff, and Roy must come on as well. He should have come on a bit earlier. Oh, Blinker will be happy that Roy's here. Yes. Yes, and remember, they're not engaging the Randall cycles. They're not including a lot of high leucine foods anyway. So that's an important factor. But if you're only having a glass of milk like I have in the evening, there's bugger all carbohydrates in that anyway to engage anything. So not going to be a problem. I didn't miss all your. I got some. I got one or two in the end. We did get some there. Trying to get some. There's always the next time, Dom. Poo mouse. I thought the terminology that we gave you was blinky poo. You mean not a quarter? You know, that's being generous. A quarter. Bert, you're so generous. He didn't even pick up on that, Bert. He hasn't replied. He hasn't made a remark whatsoever. Where is Roy? I should have been listening to the actual what Richard was saying. And what Zombie's saying. I just came to tasting good. Zombie's keeping an eye on us. Good night to you as well. There are conditions where the carnivore diet isn't appropriate. I can't think of one personally. The thing is, in the modern world, in a toxic environment that we live, obviously we need a couple of other strategies as well, which is occasionally using some plant compounds as medicine, not food, but medicine, and also using sulfur because we do deplete quite a bit, unfortunately. We do get a bit of sulfur, so methionine. We get some taurine from especially animal foods, which is very important for supporting those detoxification pathways in the liver. But sometimes because we live in such a toxic environment, we've got a lot of chemicals that are basically, you've got a gassing of a lot of chemical compounds from furniture, from carpets, from all sorts, from paints, from all sorts and solvents and stuff like that. There is so many things in our environment that are assaulting our system. Some people have got high detoxification genes like myself are probably not going to suffer as much. Others that have got that are much worse in that regards genetically are going to struggle far more and may require more sulfur and a number of other things to support those pathways. So it really depends. Can be more difficult. And they may need to make more changes to their environment, like putting filters in, taking out carpets, changing the upholstery, or doing all sorts of things. It depends on the sensitivities, and it depends. Sometimes they can get a viral condition that can cause hypersensitivity, and they may have to take some additional steps for a number of years or for a short-term period of time. It depends on what that sensitivity is. So it's not an easy thing. and it does depend on a lot of things. Just bring that down again. Yeah, so these are never easy. There's never easy answers to a lot of these sort of things. Just letting people know. Nothing like a bit of meat. You're right, zombie. Why haven't people hit the like button? Please hit the like button. God, the pot calling the kettle black. Damn. Blinky, blinky, blinky. Oh, God, if we're immature, what are you? An amoeba. Let's not go there. A tadpole. Also, I've also noticed after going carnivore, I wake up without sleep in my eyes. Other people on sad diets look like zombies with swollen faces when they wake up. Yes, very true. Very true. I wake up nice and refreshed. Even when I go late to bed, sometimes I burn I'll go really, I mean, you guys know I'll turn up, I've had a few drinks, which is probably not the best thing, and then I still wake up in the morning and I start a live stream, and I don't look like a train wreck. I hope I don't. I don't feel like it. But yeah, I mean, sad dieters are truly, I said them at work, a lot of the guys, I didn't notice it before because I was one of them. But now that I notice it, I look some people, younger people, limping around, or or having an injury that takes ages to heal. And you see this sort of stuff, and you go, "What the hell is going on?" It's and then when you look at the foods that they're eating all these, oats. One person with almond, I think it was almond milk or one of those damn milks, those vegetable milks and stuff or other like that, or all this other crap. And you look at that stuff and you go, what the? And then you wonder why they're getting fat. They can't heal. They've got injuries that don't go away or persist, or, here's me and 5 years away from retirement, I'm bloody running up the stairs and I'm going, there's something wrong with that picture. I mean, but I was there before. 15 years ago, I was at the same or slightly worse than they are today. I was having surgery on my heart. So, yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely. The quicker you can get off the kibble, the best. Was it from you? Exactly. Aren't you a mod? I thought you were a mod, aren't you? I'll make you a mod. Let me do it right now. I actually thought you were a mod. There you go. Let's just do this. I just need to find this to be able to do it. Do it. I'm trying to remember, I haven't done this for a while. It's under that. And bear with me. Oops. Am I in the right place? Trying to remember where the damn thing is. Community. That's it. See if I can. Why isn't that coming up? For some reason, I can't find you. Why can't I find you? Did you leave a comment anywhere? Let me just see if I can find one of your comments. Hey, Zombie, what's your channel? Just go directly to like you would go to your channel, because it's not going to come up any other way. I can't get it. So if I go to one of your comments, I can go directly to you. I can't do it through the chat thing. Like in the live stream, just put a comment, just hello, something like that. Doesn't have to be creative. Anything will do. Can you give me Zombie Jules? Just give me a link to your channel. You know, if your own channel, just drop it in here so I can actually go to it directly. So I can't go to it any other way to be able to get it, because it's easy when you put the channel thing in. It'll actually find your name. Your name may be conflicting. You know, YouTube's got stupid algorithms. So they've got good algorithms to basically ban people, but they don't. Where did you do it? Can't see it. Did you put it in the live stream or in the comments area? They're still in. Don't do it in the Eurasian. Do it in the other one, which is, remember the announcements one we did? Just put one in the announcements one and say hello. So go to this one. Go to this one and actually put hello in the comments area, and then I'll be able to find it. It's just bloody YouTubey with their little strange little things. So if you put hello in that one somewhere, not you, Blinky. I will sort it by new first. Oh, there she is. And there. Good. Ah, found you. Done. And done. And that one's been sorted. And I'll whack Bjorn in there as well. Oops. What the hell did that do? Yeah. Anyway, as that's coming up, I'll move through here. We'll go down here. The sad truth, people in general have no clue and understanding of gut function and what to eat. Very much so, very much so. Try putting a backpack filled with kilos of weight you lose and then run up the stairs. Yes, very, yes. Like Mr. K, Lord K himself. He's trying to get himself up to that level of performance. Oops. And he's having plenty of fun doing that. I thought I had a link of yours here, Bjorn. Where can you put in that announce ones as well? Put a comment, hello or whatever. Bjorn, just put a comment, hello, whatever, there as well. And just whack in something and I'll add you to the list. Okay, so what are we going? When I was playing basketball, I avoided red meat and eggs yolks for 14 to 25. I wondered how much damage. Hindrance, yeah, you probably did some. You're a bit more robust at that age as well, in that regard, but you would have definitely done some. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely the endurance. When I was in deep keto, God, even more than, when the more fat, yeah, when you've got high ketones, you get, you feel calm, but it feels like you're on some sort of like, you're on cloud 9 or something. It's really that sort of top energy and calmness together. It's it's like, I don't know, it's like a drug or whatever it is. It's a very strange feeling. But the funny thing is, you can go back and do that again, but you're not going to feel the feeling you had the first time. It's probably when you're coming off a sad diet or a diet that's, your body has been on so long on just sugar, and now it doesn't need it, and it's sort of like I'm on cloud nine. It's like doing something new for the first time. It's got a bit of like a spark, explodes inside you. So I have to say, Bjorn, can you put a comment in the one, the impromptu announcement one? Because the other one, for some bloody reason, just put a comment, say hello. Just put a comment saying hello. Yes, they will be. They will be. The kibble eating vegans will have brain shrinkage, and they will be basically, wouldn't say subhuman. Their ideologies is, misanthropic. Yes, poor little things. But they can recover if they just eat a bit of meat. They can become supermen as well. All they need to do is basically eat the meat. Eat the meat. Eat the meat. Come in peace. Good to see you, mate. We're just having a bit of fun. Yeah, look, everybody experienced the same thing. I haven't seen a dentist now. What is it, for 2 years? Yeah, it's a common theme. Wherever you hear your work colleagues and others, they always go, "Oh, I have to go to the dentist. Oh, I have to pull a tooth out. Oh, I've got to do this. I've got a filling today." And you sit back and you just smile and go, "Well, I didn't." Eat your meat, and you won't need the dentist. He's always projecting, Don. You should know that. He's always projecting. I experience many who do not want to hear what is healthy, and at least do not change the diet. They want to eat what they have always eaten. Well, yes, very true. When Harry met Mary. Nice one, mate. No cavities for me either. Since going keto 5 years ago, I used to have weak as ass teeth. Yeah, I know. I mean, now I just chew through bones. People see me at work and I'm chewing through bones, absolutely like chicken bones. I'm gnawing them away to get all the, the gelatinous and, hyaluronic acid and all that. And I'm gnawing away and they're going, how do you, I mean, they struggle to just eat their kibble, their teeth hurt, let alone literally munching through bones. I mean, I hope my examples are basically showing these people, getting it through their thick skulls, that the garbage that they're eating is not good for them. So yips. I just have a shot there. Got it. Done. And now I need to go to what page? To settings, community, and go to the bottom, like there. And done. Anyway, let's get back Still need to answer that one. Yes, Carney's healing me slowly. Yeah, my kids are superhuman because I got them into it before they had issues. Yeah, exactly. Look, I remember as a youngster, I was about 12 and a half, went to Greece, started eating a lot of animal foods and all that. You could see my rib cage. I had a beautiful six-pack. I was doing some weights with some of my friends, and I, cycled around all the places I got around continuously, played soccer, did all these sort of things. And I can tell you, I was tough as nails, absolutely tough as nails. I could punch through things, and, I was tough. And then I come back to Australia, and then I told, what you're eating is going to kill you. And so I believed the nonsense, like all good citizens back then, and basically got onto the kibble culture, and pretty much ruined my health quite a bit. I mean, I went out of my way to consume vegetable oil because I thought it was so heart healthy that I was going to protect my heart. And lo and behold, what I did was I hastened the damage. Yes, I declined rapidly, even though initially I was a very strong man as a youngster. And listening to the crackpots, I destroyed my health. Yes. Your kids are lucky, Jules, that they've got a mum like you that basically, is feeding them good nutrition and not kibble, and not end up as, these soy boys and soy girls that are basically very, very sick and weak, infertile and everything else. Is not a good thing. Not a good thing. So I'm going to flow through some of these until I get to some questions. Ah, yes, you should be getting blue anti-fluorescent glasses. Oh, yes. You should get the Roy look, mate. You need the Roy look ban, Ban Parlous, you need the Roy look. You need to be stylish, Just contact Blinky. He'll fill you in on the, he's a style master. Some Scandinavian. What soluble nutrients was Mary referring to? I believe there's some of the tubers and stuff like that some of the tribal people consume and stuff like that. You got tapioca, you've got taro, you've got things like that those societies traditionally consume. I suspect she was talking about those. We didn't get into specifics in that regard. Go back, check what she said. She may have actually mentioned some of them. I can't remember, to be honest. But, at the same time, selenium-rich foods are very important for binding things and getting them out. So, yes, they do help in that regard. The oil capital. You guys have still got oil. You've got plenty of oil. You got a big sovereign wealth fund because of it. You are smart people because you have a sovereign wealth fund. Other people have just pissed it up against the wall and spent it. You're welcome, Jules. Not a problem. Oh, bad luck, Dom. Hey, Bjorn has been a very strong supporter of my channel, and he does contribute quite a bit with with quite a bit of good information. So, yes, and it's a long time coming for a few people, and also because sometimes on the morning one, I usually have more people moderating on that, and sometimes I find on the Eurasian one, sometimes there's very few people around. Like Dom may be around, sometimes he's not. There's only very few people, and so since certain people are strong contributors, it also makes it much easier to respond to different questions and stuff like that. I've also added Sky on there as well from You Did It Wrong, and her friend as well. So when they do come on, they do people do troll Sky and follow her, and so they try and keep these people at bay. Some people are really weird, aren't they? Anyway, but there are all sorts of people out there. YouTube hates me for some reason. You're not the only one. Get in line. There's a long line. It's not small, it's long. Oh, God. Harry or chat. Anyone know anything about... I used to use that. Yes, I used to use that. Definitely good as I used to use that and stinging nettle. I still have got stinging nettle. Very good for, in the old days when I had a lot of xenoestrogens in my diet, and I needed to bring them down to improve my testosterone levels, and, a lot of compounds and plastics and, all that sort of stuff I actually used. And palmetto, for that reason, it does help also improve your prostate. So I used that. I used stinging nettle. I still got some stinging nettle. I haven't used it for ages. Still sitting in my drawer. But yes, good stuff if you're dealing with some of that stuff. Nowadays, I don't really need that sort of stuff, because I look at myself, libido's good, generally how I feel is good. And I'm going, do I really need all this stuff? So I sort of was using more of these things, but the more, the better I get, I'm sort of just getting rid of all this sort of stuff. So, now it's sort of more focused on, now that other Phycetine has come out, because up until that there were senolytics out there, but you can actually get certain things, certain compounds had minor senolytic effects from some herbs and spices and stuff like that. So I said, why pay the extra money for all these herbs when they don't really actually achieve any more senolytic effect, like getting rid of old senescent cells, as much as most other herbs. So I sort of gave them a miss. But then when Phycetine came out, I'm going, yeah, I know about this. There's been good research. And that's the only supplement I've been able to find. I don't know whether any other company produces it, but that's the only one. And it's just recently I was searching for it, and I go, oh, I found it. And I go, fantastic. Because in the past, it was really hard to get to. But now it's the only company on iHerb that actually sells it. And some of the other sites that do sell it, they just ask for too much money. It's too expensive. So this one's perfect. So I got some for Dad. I got some for myself again. So next time, when I just basically say to Dad, when you got through the first one, remind me to order more. So there is a bit of a high dose biohack. Dad's on just the standard one a day with food. I'm still thinking about that biohack, but I need to find and be able to look into the CD 157, which is associated with cancer, and I need to basically make sure that if I'm going to take these high doses, like a big hit, that doesn't change in any way. That's the only thing, my only concern. It's like a lot of these things, I know that they work in certain ways, but they've never really experimented long-term in humans, and I want to be careful. I don't want to put myself at risk either. So, yeah. I do like doing experiments on myself, but I don't like being, because I tend to have a reckless attitude, and I don't want to. I need to control that behavior. Yeah. Anyway, I'll move on. You should try Blood Harry. It makes the skin soft and bumps on the skin is going away. Also, the morning wood is longer and more often. I've had blood sausage in the past, and I've had other blood dishes in that regard as a soup type thing, but not recently. It's really hard. In Greece, it's much easier to get access to that stuff. In Europe, other parts of Europe, in Australia, it's bloody hard to get access to things like that. That's the biggest problem. Here it's the big supermarket chains are so dominant. Even with butchers, if you go and ask them for something like that, they look at you like, are you crazy? Are you weird? Is there something wrong with you? It's strange place. It's like in the US, it's very thing. Go to the US, I'll think you're a vampire. I'm not kidding you. People are just weird because they're so grossed out by things like that. And they just haven't, there's so much disconnection from ancestral foods. It's crazy. So, but yes, I do know that there are benefits, a lot of benefits in it, in that regard, especially if you get from what we call in Greece galactose. Galactose means like milky, which comes from young animals, so we call it, so if you get galactose ema, which is blood, it's the bee's knees, but yes, try asking for that in Australia or in North America. They're going to look at you like you grew a horn out of your head. You could put a horn in there and say, I'm a unicorn. I want blood. It's not going to work in this country. But yeah, anybody knows any place in Australia where, but it's not an easy thing. It's definitely not an easy thing to get access to. But it's a weird world we live in, where you can buy all this garbage, and Bjorn's right, blood is a healthy thing. It's got a whole lot of nutrients in it. That's the Messiah understand that it's not only the electrolytes like the sodium. There's a lot of other elements in there that are very health promoting. The problem is that we've just demonized. I mean, you just have to remember, the views that have been had about tribal people doing that, the bloodthirsty stuff and all that sort of stuff. It's just ridiculous. Nutrient foods that we once embraced are now demonized in one way or another. Yeah, just saying that that those things. I mean, I basically sometimes when I have like semi-raw or raw food, Bjorn, and I mean, I remember being at one stage where I asked the restaurant not to basically hardly cook it at all, and blood was coming out of it and all that. And I can tell you, some of my work colleagues really gave me some strange looks. They were going, "What is Harry eating?" Sort of really got some really strange, and it felt a bit uncomfortable because it's just I felt fuck, And usually now when I go out, I usually have it just basically medium rare or rare, because usually when you say rare, it gets closer to but without much blood. So because it's still cooked pretty much out on the outside, so it sort of masks what's inside in a sense. It's just the population today are really squeamish about these sort of things. They are really squeamish. It's ridiculous. What can one say? Yes, exactly. Milk's pretty important because it's raw milk, remember, Alex? It's raw milk. It's got lactoferrin. Really good for you. You can't find whose channel. Mary's. Hold on. Actually, I thought I actually put her. Yeah, I'll have to put Mary up there in my featured ones. So that's Mary's channel. So come on, move there. And what I'll do is I'll pin that up there. Whoever hasn't subscribed to Mary's channel, it's pinned in the comments. So go there and do that, please. And okay, now okay, let me put her in the. Okay, that's that. I think I'm in the wrong area. Hold on. No, I'm in the wrong area. It's the other one. Customize channel. That's it. Always getting it wrong. Always getting it wrong. So might as well put that up. I'll continue moving. So that'll be in the featured. Trouble. Be nice. Or I'll bend you over my knee and I'll give you a good spanking. You'd probably like that. Roy needs plenty of mods to help and hide all the comments. Yeah, probably. It just says a lot about my subs, doesn't it? They're very much loved by YouTubia. Yes. Especially this one. Absolutely adored by YouTubia. The AI spoke to it and said, I love you. And then it made some funny noise. Not surprising. Yeah, a few extra engineers. Yeah, the word. Love heart. Thank you. Okay, boomers, whatever you say. Got a Generation X here. He wants his boomer gif. Oh, you got one thing in common. You're all a bunch of bigots, so stop bitching. He'll have to wait. Maybe next week something may happen. I'll review who I've got in there. See how many I've got. How many I need. Yeah, don't worry. I will. I'll let you stand out. G'day, Angela. What's here in Ireland, being a spanner is not exactly a compliment. Dom probably knows what I mean. Yes, something along similar those lines is in Aussie land as well. There's only about 2 left in your subs now, Harry. Well, the rest are Roys. Yeah, we're still growing slowly, Blinky. We're still growing slowly. What is it? 750, 55? Is it? Where am I? What am I at this? 756. Oh, there you go. There was one extra. Yeah, so it's still a slow rise. Oh, well. With you around, Blinky, it's always amateur time. Don't demystify things for Blinky. Leave him in a confused mess. He likes being in that way. Yes, like old sayings. I empathize with carb eaters. My friends went Atkins 10 years ago, and I thought she was an idiot who still suffers constipation and die. And now I'm zero carb. Yes, I know. I used to say to my mate Sean when we used to walk the bike track, or my brother Sean now, I used to say to him, he used to say, you should try Atkins. And I was quite a bit of weight on at the time, and he was dragging me down the bike path and trying to encourage me to consider Atkins. And I told him that he had no idea what he was talking about. I said the nutritionist experts out there know what they're talking about, and I've been doing their thing. And I know that I'm not doing it right. I need to do it more. That's how ridiculous we were. But I think we've all been there. And once you understand, you realize that humans are humans and they're not perfect. And you need to rely on experimental science, and you can't rely on opinions of people. Unfortunately, for a long time, that's what I listened to, opinions of experts, not research. Because there was plenty of research showing the complete opposite, that showing lipid peroxidation from seed oils was really, quite bad, and aldehydes and all these sort of things. Had I looked at that research, rather than just listen to the experts, which is the lowest form of evidence, then I probably may have avoided having my chest ripped open. Maybe. Who knows? Few smokers in the crowd. Yes, exactly. Yeah, she's doing the right thing. She's going to have very healthy children that will be very appreciative of their long-term health. I don't know what that says, but I'll put it up there as something polite. And okay, honestly, I should show you what a Carnivore 9 and 12-year-old looks like. They are tall, lean, and gifted. Exactly. Ah, yes, those smoking Frenchmen. So do Greeks. Greeks smoke quite a bit, so do the Japanese. And both the Greeks and Japanese live longer. At the end of the day, look, smoking is not healthy. The Inuit used to smoke. They never got cancer or cardiovascular disease. And they used to give it to their children as well. It does reduce, if you're basically sedentary, it's going to do you more harm. If you have a good diet where you can detox it, it's going to do you less. But at the end of the day, like alcohol, it's a toxin to the body. But if you're eating well and you're on an ancestral diet, it's going to have less negative effects. It's simple as that. Oops. Done. Should have done that earlier, 30 minutes ago. Sticks on your tongue. Anyway. Oops. Wire for me. I probably should get one of those blankets. Yeah, just haven't thought about it. But I do some grounding myself, you know. At lunchtime, I definitely sort of lie down and take a nap in parks and stuff like that. So yes, that would, but I probably need to get something like that and connect it outdoors and do it at night. I think I'd get more benefit from it. So I think we all would, you know. I just haven't got around doing it. You know, I should bloody order one now that I'm thinking of it. Right after this live stream. Okay. That's the other thing that I need to get. Thanks for actually reminding me, Bjorn. I do need to get, you know, remember the ones that you put on the earthing implement that you put on your shoes, your runners? I need to get another because I've actually changed my runners now and I haven't forgot to buy some. So I need to buy some more of those. Yeah. Just sausage fingers. Yeah, it is. Look, if you're very healthy, probably you'll get some improvement, but you're much young. You're also younger, Bjorn, so you've got less damage and stuff like that. So, you know, people that are older with more damage and all that, they're going to notice far more. But you have to think about it. Look at all these tribal populations. They're sitting on the ground, putting animal skins down. They're sitting on the ground. So they're earthing all the time. They're walking barefoot most of the time and stuff like that. Traditionally, they're doing a lot of, you know, giving off positive ions and taking up negative ions. They're increasing the negative charge in their endothelial cells and allowing for, you know, the ability for things to flow through their arteries in a much more fluid way. There's less sort of stickiness to the red blood cells as well. They sort of keep apart. So many benefits in a sense. Our disconnection from the earth and the sun is all these things, and an ancestral food. I think it's those three together. And the sun, when we talk about circadian rhythms, we're talking about the light cycles and stuff like that. We're really causing a lot of our problems, modern problems. So yeah, I'd have to agree with you on a lot of that. Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does make evolutionary sense. Yeah, you can do that, or you can actually get a wire all the way out and put a stake into the ground. Some people do it that way. The reason why they do it that way is also they're concerned about dirty electricity in the house as well, because the earthing wire is connected to the rest of the actual, to the meter box and stuff like that. So some people think that it'd be better not to, due to dirty electricity, to basically connect directly to the ground. Yeah. Yep, the spike outside. Yep, exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah. I definitely do not recommend the sort of earthing wire. I know people do it, and I know some people, if somebody's in some place like, okay, you're in New York, you're in a big building, a skyscraper. Obviously, there's no way you're going to earth yourself from, the 20th floor or whatever. It's not going to happen. So you may have to use that method. And usually the electricals in that sort of environment are going to be far better. Well, you would hope anyway. Yep, there are plenty of stuff. Yep, exactly. You can get. Yep, you could do that. I still, and especially if you can get something set up like that, slightly isolated to the earth. There's a lot of discussion when it comes to big cities as well, with a lot of underground wiring and stuff like that. It's a lot of concern. So I still have a lot of question marks on that, and there hasn't been much research, which is hard to point to something, but whatever you can do to sort of improve your grounding does help. Random question, but is it possible for keto, carni, or fasting, etc., to reverse vasectomy? A vasectomy? Never heard of that happening. Unlikely. There are real cases of 1 to 5% of vasectomies do not work as it should. Carnivores be cautious. Should carnivores be cautious? I'll tell you one thing. I haven't heard anything about it. I know that I don't think it has specifically to do with a carnivore diet or the keto diet or anything like that, but I have heard that some vasectomies are not as well done or as successful. And so, yes, you can still get somebody pregnant. But, yeah, sort of thing. But whether any of that sort of stuff can cause a reverse of a surgical procedure, unlikely. There would, but could these things heal? Potentially. We know that basically, when you take your gallbladder out, your body can create a new pouch where the gallbladder used to be. So maybe, don't know. It'd be interesting. I truly do not know whether that could be the case or not, or whether on an ancestral diet you could partially or somehow reverse, maybe. I think hard to say, because you're actually causing quite a bit of severage there and disconnection. Sort of, I find it hard. How can it actually reconnect when it's being isolated in such a way? When you're cutting those tubes off, where with the actual, you're not actually getting rid of the actual bile ducts. When you're taking out the gallbladder, you're just getting rid of the gallbladder itself, which is the sort of the redirected, which comes back, which stores something to push into the bile ducts. So it's slightly different. So I'm hesitant to say yes, but I don't know. But I suspect not, but I could be wrong. I think it's more the procedure, that if the procedure isn't done as well, there may be a possibility where these parts as tubes can reconnect and sort of allow the carriage, of semen, but don't know. That's not an area that I've actually looked into. Gives me goosebumps when I think about it. I want my stuff intact. I'm traditional in that way. I don't like what I was born with, I want to go out with, unless it has to be removed for survival. No other reason. Yeah, you can do that, or around your foot. Different people do different things. As long as you're earthing, yeah. Yes, I know. Shocking look, isn't it? Crazy, So, and here's my mother fed me brains. I mean, it's one of the richest foods in cholesterol, phospholipids, phosphatidylserine, phosphatidylcholine. I can go on and on in the nutritions. You know how much enzymatic pathways are required to produce those things for your brain to incorporate into your brain? And you can eat that food exactly and not have to do any of that and get it directly and put it in there. So, yeah, it's incredible food. It's brain food. Yes. But unfortunately, yes, we do get some really strange looks. I remember my father loved brains, still does. So, especially when you have a whole animal and you, like when we get, it's even hard in Australia. I sometimes have to, we do occasionally get heads of animals, but it's hard. Last time when we had a piglet, I kept the head. I did give it to my brother-in-law because I'd already taken some lamb heads last time. So I said, "Oh, okay, just keep it." So he had the pig's head. But yeah, it is. I know. Look, I ask for all sorts of things, and I get these strange looks. Why do you want this? Because if you were to make kukuretsi like they make in Greece with the intestinal tract, with all the organ meats in the intestinal tract, you go and ask for the different organs. They have very few. It's primarily kidneys, heart, and liver. Very hard to get the other ones, which is one problem. To get all the organs, unless you sort of make arrangements. That's one issue. Then if you ask for the intestinal tract, they usually throw that out pretty fast. They don't want to give it out because the potential, where the problem lies is the potential for, let's say, their sort of thinking is, if somebody gets sick, then they'll blame me for selling them this thing. But we know how to deal with it. We know how to wash it out and clear it out properly and prepare it, and then use it and wrap it and cook it. But yeah, it's just, that's why I haven't had cucuretti in Australia at all. I've had friganella, which is the liver parts, which is like liver chips. But it's really hard to basically get a butcher to collaborate with you in that way, unless you've got directly, like we used to in the past, go directly to farmers and get the stuff. But even there, it's not as easy with some people. I've got one friend who's a farmer, and he actually sells us whole animal and stuff like that, and that's easy. But to get these sort of things on a regular basis, it's not easy, believe me, especially in countries like Australia. They bloody make it difficult. Pisses me off, but that's the reality. Can't do much about it. You wanted to try to thicken up your hair, try MSM sulfur, mate. Try MSM sulfur. The sulfur bonds that sort of, very important in the hair. Try if you want to really, really thicken your hair. Biotin, which is in eggs, great food, and basically MSM sulfur, that will really thicken your hair. It's the reason why I use MSM sulfur, because I've got genetics for baldness, and most of my other relatives either have gone bald or got patches and all sorts of things, something that I do not have, and something that they do have, and that's because they eat kibble and other crap. Yeah, look, for me, I notice a lot of thickness of the hair when I get more zinc and sulfur in my hair, and biotin, like eggs, those three together, and eggs tend to have sulfur in themselves. My hair really thickens up. So sometimes it thickens up too much, which becomes an issue with my barber. But anyway, that's another story. But I can get my hair really thick if I eat shitloads of eggs, shitloads of MSM sulfur, and put those sort of things in. My hair really becomes really thick and really strong. So that's what you want to get, that sort of stuff. And I get the Jarrow one from iHerb, the MSM. Anyway, let's move on. And as long as you're getting all the other micronutrients from an animal-based diet, very important, you should be fine, because, yes. I imagine I asked for brains too, but they need a separate room to handle that in Norway because of the food. Oh, so it must be food regulations. Okay. It drives me up the wall. You can't get what you want. You can ask for any crap out there, and they'll hand it over. Here in Norway, you can buy frozen pig's blood in bigger supermarkets. Really? Oh, that's really, you can buy pig's blood. That's surprising. God, you guys are lucky. You can't get that stuff in Australia. Forget it. God, if you ask for it, they'd look at you funny. They go, "What's wrong with you?" And as I said, in America, they'd probably think you're a vampire. That's how crazy the world has become. Or a bloodthirsty Maasai warrior, as they used to be called. So, yeah, it's a weird world we live in. Really, really wacko world. All that mad cow's disease propaganda at work. Yes. I mean, yes, there are certain things But it's not only in the brains. If the cow's got the if the cow's diseased, it will be in all tissue. So that's why they usually remove the animal and destroy it. So, yeah. So I don't know. Just because it affects the brain, it doesn't mean it's only in the brain tissue. So prions will be in all sorts of tissue. And so if a cow has such prions and you consume just the meat of it, you don't even have to consume the brains, you will get it. Nothing to do. It's just because it affects the brains of both the animals or humans. That doesn't mean, just because it concentrates more in the brain, it doesn't mean the brain's the problem. It's all the tissue that's actually been infected by these sort of things. So, that's why they get removed out of the thing. But even then, I think as well, if your body's robust and very strong and all that, it may be able to deal with these prions. I don't know. We've never done, real proper studies to really work out whether, because they've been in the environment before. So do we have susceptibility? Hard to say. I do know there can be issues. There are like tribes in Papua New Guinea that have a lot of these brain disorders because of certain things that they used to eat, like the brains of their own, of their ancestors, and they used to get these diseases. But you have to have this disease in the first place. So it's a difficult thing to actually answer in that regard. But it is an issue. But it is an issue with all sorts of things in the environment. I mean, food, whether it's a plant or whether it's an animal, there are all sorts of toxins, there are all sorts of bacteria, there are all sorts of things that potentially could have a negative effect on people in one way or another. At the end of the day, the food supply is the issue. Demonizing one food because of one type or another is a bit over the top. If you've got a problem, you remove it, that animal from the food supply. Usually in nature, that animal would have died very young, so it would have not been picked off, so it would not be an issue. And so it's just in domesticated animals and stuff like that, these things can become more pronounced for the simple reason that the way the environment is. So animals in the wild, you don't really see these things to those degrees. That's why you don't see it in populations with non-domestic animals, which are basically, even in the Maasai, yes, they do have domesticated animals, the cows that they use, but they are in a very pastoral, traditional type setting, the way they operate. Now, I can't prove that the current farm practices are what is causing some of these issues, prions and many other things. I have some suspicions, having looked at some research on prions and having looked on some of the kibble stuff that they give to rats that make them susceptible to these things. So is it, we don't really see these things in the wild. So is this disease, something that is in these animals that basically goes rogue? It's a bit like candida. You get overgrowth. Candida is always in the body, but it's sort of normal. It doesn't touch you, it doesn't affect you. But when it goes rogue, it really goes rogue. And I think that prions may be the same thing. It's a hypothesis of mine. I can't prove it. It's a hypothesis, okay? So it's an unproven hypothesis, pure speculation on Harry's side. So let's make that quite clear. We're not it's not science. It's a speculative opinion of Harry, and that's it. But I think that the feeding kibble to these animals is probably making them susceptible to these prion sort of infections. That means we've deranged their gut microbiome, we've deranged their bodies, we've removed some of the protective mechanisms to deal with these prions, and it makes them susceptible. Because I look at the countries where we've had the majority of outbreaks of these prion-based diseases, and it's societies that basically are feeding grains and kibble, these sort of things, to the animals. So that's where I look at other societies around the world that that feed their cattle and feed their animals actual grass. They don't have these problems. They've never had a case of prion disease in Maasai, even in India. There's, I've never heard of a prion disease, and many other societies which have animals, both tribal or agricultural societies that have domesticated animals that are out eating grass in different parts of the world, the Central Asia and all that. So I do think it's the kibble. I honestly think it's the kibble. I think the prions may be something that's in these animals. It doesn't cause any problems until you put the kibble on in there, deranges their immune system and whatever else, and then these prions go rogue and start behaving the way they behave, or maybe alter, like Candida alters. It's a hypothesis. I could be completely wrong, but I think that I may not be too far away from the truth. These derangements that happen in animals that create these strange disease states. We saw it with Pottinger's cats and all that, and we're doing now that experiment on humans. I think I'm on the right track on that, but I'm not going to say that I can prove it. I don't have a lab to do experiments with multiple generations of certain animals to see whether we can induce these things like Pottinger did. I'd love somebody, if anybody's listening to this and you're a veterinary scientist or whatever, could you bloody do this experiment and actually prove me wrong, or prove me, or at least prove that animals in the wild don't actually end up with the same sort of conditions. Anyway, let's move on. It's one of my pet things. Thanks for bringing it up, Bjorn. It has to be said because I've thought about it a long time ago, but I forgot all about it, and you reminded me to talk about it, because back then it was a big issue. People were talking about mad cow's disease, and I thought they were a bunch of, they were talking crap, and I still do. And that's why I believe in, if you're going to eat brains, it's got to be from a grass-fed animal. It's got to be a healthy animal. I would never eat a brain or any organ meats from an animal that's been eating a lot of kibble. We know that some of these animals, by the time they get slaughtered, have actual like liver cancer, some of them. That's how sick they are from the kibble that they fed them. That's why they have to slaughter them pretty quick, fatten them up and then slaughter them. So yes, the modern world of agriculture. Yes. Thanks, mate. Happy Easter to you as well. Yep, so I'll just go past my comment. We don't need to put that up on the board. More about blood sausages and earthing and all that. Never believe that Harry bloke. He doesn't always fulfill his, because he's busy. He's a busy lad. Ask Roy. Actually, I had quite a bit of I had pork today with Dad, and I did have seafood that was on the Friday, and tomorrow we're having another, because they had today sort of I'm online, and a few of other my friends were going up the East Coast, so they went up there So there was church service on the East Coast. That's fine. So they did that. I went to Dad's, and tomorrow I'm looking forward to a bit of lamb as well. Yes. And it's going to be a roast, so it's going to be nice. And I've got a whole lot of, got some Italian sausages, some burgers, some patties, so to speak, with nice herbs in them. Those Italian sausages that we get, which are with a fennel type thing, really nice. So there's a few in there with some classical herbs, or what you could call them, earthy herbs. Earthy? Don't know. That's what I call them anyway. I'll have to throw myself in there as a wrench. Oops. I'll leave you tips. YouTube gets 30%, remember? We don't want to support them. I'll have to set something up so you guys, and I'll send it to my charity. I usually do, other people that have asked me, I usually have asked them to not send it to me, but to send it to the Smith family in Australia, which is a charity which I do support. They help young people find their way and, build up their self-esteem and get their act together, basically, which is a good thing. They become much more responsible and good citizens to contribute to society, not to just take. Yes. A good organization that helps kids not become bludgers. That's a different thing altogether. A friend of mine, she had a hole in the heart. I don't know whether that was yours as well. No, mine was induced by shitloads of seed oil. Wasn't big in sugar, but it was seed oil, massive amounts that I consumed, and I avoided a lot of animal fats. So if I had any meats that were extremely lean and they were very bit, not a lot, and I consumed a lot of tubers and all that sort of stuff. All the stuff that we recommended we should eat. So. Yeah, I probably will do something like that. I'll probably, it sounds like a good idea, setting up something with Streamlabs like that, Shell. And then once you get to hit a certain amount of money, maybe $100, you just basically send them a donation at that point. That sounds like a good idea. Yep, actually. Yeah, for me, it's, couple of dollars here or there probably may make a difference for some people that are basically dependent on social media, and I can understand that. I'm not basically knocking it, but I don't have those needs. So, but actually setting up something for where it can be directed towards the Smith family, that sounds like that sounds like a good idea. I should investigate Streamlabs from now. I could actually even do it now. And we could basically have like a running tally, and whatever maybe every year or every half year or whatever, I make a big donation of whatever's in there. So let it sort of get to whatever it is, and then whatever's there gets donated. Yeah, it's a good idea. Thanks, Shell. I just have to motivate myself to set it all up. Okay, now... I don't think he was into sort of fast cars and loose women. No. Jesus, 50? We're talking about his age. I think he was younger than that. More about earthy and electric wires. Yes. Yes. Get a bit more taurine in you. That helps. With increasing GABA and sort of improving some, because basically, dopamine hits are a bit like the sympathetic nervous system being completely activated. Ding, ding, ding. I need the hit. I need the hit. I need the hit. So, calming down, yoga, getting more taurine in the diet to increase the GABA helps. These sort of things help. A bit of glycine in there as well sort of helps. So takes about 3 weeks to sort of be able to kick. I remember it took me about 3 weeks. So I did take a medication at the time. I probably wouldn't do it today, but I did take it at the time in my more ignorant days. It was called Zyban. I didn't take the whole lot of it. Took about 2/3 of the dosage, and I can tell you it's like an antidepressant. Well, it sort of is an antidepressant medication, but it's used to help people get off nicotine addictions, like smoking. The high, fuck me, because I did it with my brother Sean. You couldn't sleep. You're on an absolute fucking high all day. I had to go for hours and hours with Sean. We'd be walking throughout the whole night. We'd meet up after we had our meal in the evening, and we would go for these long walks. All, we're talking about into the far outer suburbs of the city and back again into the CBD and then to the northern suburbs and back. And we would be doing these massive distances in order to literally tire ourselves out so we could get to sleep, because that is the high that we get. But did it help? Yeah, it did. It allowed me to kick the habit. And now occasionally I may have, like, let's say a cigar. I may go somewhere and have a cigar, smoke a cigar or something like that on a special occasion, and it doesn't hook me back into tobacco at all. Not at all. So it did help. But fuck, what an antidepressant. I mean, I was because I wasn't depressed. So taking an antidepressant like Zyban, I was like, fully charged and going around like a maniac trying to get rid of all the energy. Because, I was full, like an Energizer battery, like that little rabbit that goes and go on forever. Yeah, I felt like something like that little rabbit. Yes, crazy. But, yeah. But look, it doesn't help everyone, but yeah. I did the full course of Zyban, point, and that insurance and government subsidy won't cover any more. I read all the books. I have done everything. Okay. Yeah. Look, it's a hard habit to give up. I tend to have a bit of an addictive personality. It's not as bad as it used to be. Now that I'm now that I'm basically as a young, how can I put this? I think the carnivore diet's, when you're on a high fat, especially version of the carnivore diet, I think it's much easier, or a high sort of ketotic type diet. I think it's much easier to give up, tobacco, because I had less of the food addictions. I think you have to be, ketosis can work. Hey, there's a message there, and there's a whole lot of spanners, and JD put the word bastard in there. That did it for YouTubia. God, you give people so many spanners, and everybody's sitting there. Oh, it's not me. Let somebody else click on the button. And yes, so it's a difficult thing to get off. I can understand. I can sympathize. I've been there. But I can tell you, that antidepressant, God, did it give you a high like me? I was on cloud 9. Absolutely. Nah. Don't listen to that propaganda. It's hard for parents to have too many kids in the modern world. They don't make it easy. Zombie goes, Zyban is the best anti-anxiety med I've ever had, and the dreams are amazing, lucid. The dreams are amazingly lucid. That's true as well. I didn't realize they use it for anti-anxiety as well. Okay. So I used it 2/3 of the dose. That's all I needed. I ended up giving, well, actually, Sean did the same thing. He cut off the same thing. He went cold turkey. He was, motivated. He saw me cut, and he goes, I'm not going to basically continue, because then Harry will call me a soft cock. So he basically didn't do that. So he gave up, and so he only did 2/3 as well, but he did give up smoking. So, because otherwise I would have given him hell, and he knew it. So I would have called him weak and everything else under the sun. And so, you do that to your to the people you love, because it motivates them, toughens them up. And then we actually gave it over to, we gave the other stuff over to David, and one of our other friends. And he took his Zyban, he took our leftovers, and he still couldn't bloody get off smoking. And now he's going in for another operation because he's got one of those poor blood vessels that could erupt. He doesn't look after himself. He eats the wrong stuff. And yes, what can one say? But as I was going to say on this issue, how many we could support multiple billions of people on this planet. It's a question of our ingenuity and whether we can basically extract more energy. We've got basically in thorium, we've got about 10,000 years of energy. We don't have a lot in uranium, but in thorium we do shitloads, and many other sources of energy, which we've got shitloads of energy which you can tap into. And as long as you've got energy, remember the productivity is based on the energy potentiality of a system and the ability to harness that energy in an efficient way. And with robotics and automation, you can do that. And then you can actually produce things at much cheaper rates, at much greater amounts, and provide for greater number of people. Remember, there are a lot of areas out there that basically need more ruminant animals on there, because we've decimated the actual real ruminant animals. And how do we know this? Well, the carbon-12 fingerprint in the atmosphere is going down. The carbon-13 from fossil fuels is going up because we're killing off the wild animals and we're planting soy, and that needs petrochemical inputs to grow. and that's where the carbon-13 is coming in the methane, and the carbon-12 is declining because we've got less ruminant animals, and those ruminant animals build soils. So if we were to put more of those ruminant animals out in nature, in our environment, we would build more soils and we would have more productivity on the surface of this planet. But we don't do that because we want to sell profitable kibble. That's what the big food companies want to do. And profitable kibble makes people sick, makes it impossible to support large amounts of population because your health system can't function. My throat is drying out after so much talking. Yes. Anyway, guys, I've had a fun time. It's getting to that later time, and I would love to go through the remaining. There's quite a few questions here I've missed. Sorry, do apologize, but I'm going to have to pull the plug. You know what one vegetard said? That she was basically, because she's born, yeah, I actually put a comment up. She was born in 1980. So, yes. But she looks older than 40. You know, you just have to look at her. Somebody said, oh, she's 65, some vegetard. And then I actually provided all the proof. And he goes, oh, never replied back. Let alone she cheats. She bloody cheats. She does injectables. Like she got all the ways of actually cheating on a vegan diet from no other than, you know, Harley, durian rider. Durian rider taught her well how to cheat, how to use injectables, how to basically avoid a lot of the deficiencies that a lot of the other vegans that do it without cheating. And that's why they don't last very long. The reason why she lasts a bit longer is because, one, she's depleting deuterium in the tropics. And the other thing is she's basically injecting everything under the sun to keep herself going. But it's not going to last forever. At some point, she's going to basically suffer far more problems. And that is the issue. Man, I'd pay good money. I'd love to see that. God, I'd be there with a camera. You organise it, I'll be there, Jules. Yes. Yeah, there's plenty of people here that would. Got a lot of fans. Yep. Just one punch would probably shatter some part of a bone structure. You know, is that bloody weak? You can only get so far with injectables and with cheats and stuff like that. And she would have learned all those tricks of the trade from Durian Rider, you know, our dear friend Harley, the vegan con man. Yes. He likes to con people about how good the vegan diet is, but it's bullshit. We know. He wears a toupee. He's lost his hair, and he takes a whole lot of injectables. He did admit once that he took steroids. And I was surprised when he actually admitted that he actually cheated with steroids. We know that Hench does. We've seen his belly button, which is a typical thing of people abusing anabolic steroids and stuff like that. But, you know, Harley didn't have to admit. I don't know why he admitted it at the time, but he did. And I wouldn't be surprised if she was basically, you know, using something as well, anabolic like that, to keep herself going. So I would not be surprised. But at the end of the day, she'd still be weaker. I'd put my money on Zombie. She'd definitely thump the living daylights out of her. And yes. Anyway, great, Angela. Thank you as well, and all the spanners here. Could have been more colourful and said I won't say it. I'll be nice. I won't say it. I'll be nice. Be nice. And guys, thank you. It's been really entertaining. I hope you enjoyed the earlier part with Mary on and all that sort of stuff. I wish she would have. She normally, she would stay longer. Like last time, she stayed. She loves answering all sorts of questions, but she had to go somewhere else. Which and I understand she's got a lot on her plate at the moment, running back and forth with all these sort of meeting up with people, interviews, and stuff like that. So, I mean, good for her. It's good to see her. She's doing, she's going out of her way to do all this research and learn all these things. And she's just such a valuable resource. I've learned a lot. We've all learned a lot, and I'm really looking forward. Because the sand book. I mean, I know everybody jumps about the Maasai and all that. For me, the sand people, the Bushmen of the Kalahari, have always been dear to my heart. And so I do want to hear about them. I definitely do. I know that they are very high protein type consumers from the traditional research that I've looked at in the past, stuff that was done by people that were associated with Cordain and a few of the others in the paleo community. I'd like to see her take on what she's seen and what she's, I hope she's had an opportunity to met up with a lot of different groups within the Sand people, sort of to give us a bit of a background on what's happening with them as well. I've got a lot of concerns about them, and their societies have been really destroyed with all these damn national parks that have closed off so many parts of Botswana and many other parts, and really limited them, forced them into sort of shanty town situations, which is just horrific, to say the least. So it's, yep, I definitely will, Shell. Definitely will. Blinky, blinky, blinky. Yes, what can one say, Shell? I'm gonna have to tie him up one of these days. Put him in a box. Send him over to you so you can sort him out. Somebody has to. Am. Thank you. I feel privileged. Yes. Don't know how to answer that. You've sort of, you got me there. Thanks. Yeah. I'm lost for words in that regard. I think, look, there are a lot of good people out there that are trying to get the good message out. Mary's one of them. Bart's another. There's a lot of people out there that are fighting the good fight. Sean Baker's another person that are trying to get the message out there for people to realise that, we need to stop this drive into 100% kibble. It's going to be a disaster for the human race. So I'm really, that's my biggest concern. I look at the younger people and I'm really worried for them. The world, I think we need to do more, and we need to fight more about these sort of things. I know that Mary's got, that's the other thing we didn't talk last time. I know she's got a charity. I'm trying to remember the damn thing. She's got a charity where, look, I'll find out about it, actually. It may be also another reason to get her on to discuss this charity. She's actually got a charity Oh, what is it called again? She mentioned in one of her live streams, but anyway, I'll find out. What they do is you give donations, and what they do is they buy animals for young kids. That's it. Cows for Kids, I think it is. I think something along those lines. Thanks, Bjorn. And yeah, or kids or children. I just can't remember what it is. Yep, one of those. Good. I'll find out more about it from her and try and get her on to discuss the whole thing and all that. And I need to find out more about the Streamlab stuff, set up something for that as well. So that'd be a good idea, actually, to set something like that. Does anybody know whether she's got a Streamlab thing for donations to this, or is it anyway, look, I'll email her and I'll find out, and then I'll do a little video about it and try and get more people in the carnivore community to contribute to this, which would help those communities as well. So we need to fight, because what's happening is we're seeing all these governments that are a bunch of assholes. They are. They have sold out their own population. They are basically in bed for the benefits. Bring in the kibble and get the benefits from the IMF and the World Bank and all that sort of stuff, so they can continue their lavish lifestyles, because that's what they do. They don't reinvest it in the population. They just place debt burdens on their own population so they can live like kings. So it is that. Okay, thanks, Alex. And I will take that and I'll replace the pin message. I'll put that on the top so you guys can go there. It's really drying out. Yes, and we need to support movements to bring back this sort of thing. The other thing that people can do, I've always said, to parents and friends and all that, there are parents and friends associations around the place. If you're on a school committee and stuff like that, you need to start pushing back this kibble culture, this bullshit that they're actually putting. And we need to put information out there to parents. If you're in school committees and stuff like that, get the information out. Carnivore, they're doing their kibble propaganda. Let's start doing our own truthful propaganda about, the benefits of animal foods. And let's expose these charlatans, because they are trying to destroy the young. They don't care. It's all about profits. And most parents and friends, these organizations, teachers, have no idea, because they're completely ignorant about diet and about health and nutrition. But we need to point out, those historical truths and just keep it simple. I'll be also looking into something like that with my. I sent all the stuff to a few people in terms of the myths and falsehoods of veganism, but I still, I'm prioritize. I've got a few health stuff that I'm doing at the moment. I want to do one on prostate cancer and a few other things. So I've got a few other things because, people are dying. They need some of this information. But outside that, I will eventually start doing some of those myths and legends stuff, which is one thing, which you then guys can use. I'm going to make them short. They're going to be like 5 to 15 minutes. They're going to be very short, to the point, so you can just use them to post them elsewhere. Like point forms, like little attack point forms. So that's one. The other thing that I'm going to be looking at is trying to do some stuff specific that can help, like, those generic questions, that people will ask in general, like out there in the general sort of stuff, how to argue points. So when people say, I'll give you an example. Say, God, how can you say that, eating just a meat diet would be healthy? You can turn around and just say to them, well, the Inuit have been doing it over multiple generations, and they were pretty healthy for a long time. It's, it's not eating animal foods per se. It's basically eating things that are not basically processed, that come out of a factory. Arguments like that really just, nullify that because somebody says, well, yeah, the Inuit have been, well, multiple generations, no cancer, no health conditions. How can it be wrong immediately? You know? So, yes, definitely. And I mean, even things that, like Mary pointed out about these sort of things, you don't have these things in tribal societies. Why? Because, again, hormones and the immune system and all that, and a lot of the actual enzymes that are actually involved in the regulation of growth in the body are also regulated by fat soluble vitamins, and in prostate in particular, vitamin D regulates the cell proliferation with a secondary role from retinol. So, you know, what have we got endemic in our society? Endemic deficiency in fat soluble vitamins, and in particular vitamin D. And then we wonder why prostate cancers in the Western world are so high. It's not accidental. In this case, it's both partially the diet and the other, and a big thing, avoidance of the sun. So, and I understand why that avoidance of the sun came about, because people have been eating seed oils, putting that shit into their skin and then getting burnt very easily and thinking, oh, it's the sun that's the fault. No, it's the seed oil in your skin that's oxidizing and actually causing that burning effect and that damage to your skin surface. And then you don't have enough collagen, and then the collagen degrading enzymes come out and proliferate uncontrollably from this damage. And then because they're not being regulated by fat soluble vitamins, they actually make the situation worse. And by making the situation worse, they make that's part of the skin even more vulnerable to skin cancer. But if you basically had the fat soluble vitamins regulating that whole process, and you didn't have that crappy oxidation product in your skin in the first place, it would be a very mild damage from UV and enough fat soluble vitamins to repair it and sort it out, and you would not have any problems. So, you know, the diet plays a big role, but it's hard to get that thing around to people, you know, diet and sun. As I said, give me meat and sun and I'll be happy, you know. So with that, I will let you go and love you all, and I will see you guys next week, unless I decide for some reason to have an impromptu live stream this week. So you never know your luck. Yes, I am off to bed. I'm definitely off to bed. It's 9:30, so I've got one thing that I have to do and sort out, and then at about 10 o'clock, I'm going to beddy buys. So thanks, guys. Take care. See yous all, and yep, me too, mate. Yep. Thanks. I'll try and have a great week. I've got a few things set up with a few friends, and you know, we will have a bit of good fun and a bit of jokes and stuff like that. Oh yes, that Roy bloke. Yes, my other best half, my twin. And yeah, so thanks, guys, for being here. Appreciate it. Take care and good night, and see you all. Oh, definitely. I love sweet dreams. With a boner at the end. Oops, did I let that slip out? I'm going. See you. Oh, see you, Blinky. Bye, dear Blinky. I'm out of here.